Good morning, everyone. We're going to call a meeting of the Carson City Board of Supervisors and the Carson City Liquor and Entertainment Board to order. Today is Thursday, March 5th, 2015. It is 8:30 a.m. We're in the Community Center, Sierra Room at 851 East William Street here in our very own Carson City. Sue, could we have a roll call for the record, please?
Good morning. Supervisor Bowd?
Here.
Supervisor Bonkowski?
Here.
Supervisor Bagwell?
Here.
Supervisor Shirk?
Here.
Mayor Kroll?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Sue. Could we call on our good friend Chaplain Joel Buxton of our very own Carson City Sheriff's Office? Joel, get us, huh? Greg.
Yeah, Joel's sick, so I'm covering for him today. Okay. We ask you to please bow your heads and pray for God's blessings. Blessed are you, Lord God of all creation, whose goodness fills our hearts with joy. Blessed are you, Lord God, who have brought us all together this day to work for the betterment of our community in harmony and peace. Strengthen all here today with your grace and wisdom. Grace us with your saving presence. Aid us with your constant help. May everything we do with your inspiration and continue with your help, so that all our works may be for the good of those we serve. Open our ears that we may hear what is said, that we may seek to understand. Open our eyes that we may see the needs of those who stand before us. Open our hearts that we act with compassion and honesty. Guide our thoughts and works that we may speak with respect and compassion. Fill us all with inspiration and help us to set aside the prejudgments that we can make and decisions for the betterment of our community. May God grant you joy and peace. May he strengthen you and bring your work to completion. May hope accompany your journey through the days to come. Lord God of mercy, send down your blessings on these your servants, who so generously devote themselves to serving this community. May God's abiding presence be with you, and may the Lord bless you and keep you. May his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. Amen.
Please follow in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're now at item number 5 on our agenda. This is the time for public comment to discuss any topic as relevant to or within the authority of either the Board of Supervisors or the Liquor and Entertainment Board. But this one's particularly for the Board of Supervisors. We also take public comment where appropriate, and it usually is during the agenda day. Gianna, you want to come up, public comment? Good morning.
Morning. For the record, Gianna Shirk. Good morning, Mayor, Board of Supervisors. I'm here this morning just for a few minutes to let you know I'm your newly elected chairperson of the Carson City Shade Tree Council. Gary Borst is your vice chair, and this happened following our last meeting of the Shade Tree Council. I just want to let you know you're going to be seeing us coming forward on your agenda in the next couple weeks, several months. We want to bring some items to your attention. And just briefly, the purpose of the Shade Tree Council is to provide the Board of Supervisors with advice on matters concerning the development, maintenance, management, and promotion of a safe and healthy, attractive urban forest in Carson City. This was established in 1993, and we're very proud of the opportunity to do that. And we're concerned about two things that you will be seeing on your agenda soon. One will be the landscape standards that we adopted in 2007. Excuse me. In 2007, and we're concerned that the landscape standards, maybe people don't even know about it, but there are some ordinances requiring new construction to follow our landscape standards, and so that precluding homeowners, that does include the corridor revitalization projects, all of them. Second agenda item you'll be seeing eventually is our tree inventory. We were awarded $18,141 from the Nevada Division of Forestry to conduct a tree inventory. So we're going to be looking for that on your agenda, and we want to be part of that process. There's a RFP, request for proposal. So we want to be part of that process and get that done by the end of the year. We do have a time frame. Lastly, just two important events I want to remind you all of. I hope you clear your calendars, so write this down. The Arbor Day celebration that the council held every year, this is our 23rd annual Arbor Day celebration, will be on Saturday, April 25th. And we hope you'll all come. We plant a tree every year with our golden shovels, and the mayor usually, or a representative, will read the proclamation for our Arbor Day in Nevada. This year we're going to do a fun run, walk. We did it last year. We started a new tradition. We charge very little money. It's part of a fundraising event to plant the tree and serve a little water. It's going to be a beautiful spring day. We have had snow in April on occasion, but you never know. So all those events will be coming to you. We have a flyer and stuff coming forward. And lastly, again, it's our 23rd annual Fall Tree Care Seminar, Thursday, November 12th. Quite some time from now, but we educate the professionals in town. We're going to invite you all to attend. We have a lineup of speakers on various topics, and again, I'll get that all to you. That's all I have this morning. I just wanted to let you know what was going on your Shade Tree Council. As you know, new leadership brings new ideas, and we're going to continue the tradition of the Shade Tree Council, and that's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Any questions, Gianna? Go.
What was the date for Arbor Day?
All right.
25th, March
Yes,
or April?
Saturday, April 25th.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all very much. Have a good meeting.
Thank you. Thanks, Gianna. And I think we got a new member that filed an application.
Oh, that's right.
I don't know if she filed or not, but that was a good move.
We do have 2 vacancies.
Okay.
I forgot
Right.
to mention that.
All right.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
All right. All right, any other public comment? Anybody? I don't see any. Okay, we'll take up the agenda now. We're going to pull item 20B, and that'll be held on a future agenda. 20B is the Schultz Ranch landscaping issue. Any other matters to come off, City Manager?
No agenda items to come off. When we get to the appointments to the Open Space Advisory Commission, I have a couple of updates on 2 of the people. We can do that.
Do that then.
When we get to that.
Okay. Board members are okay with the agenda, pulling with where it is? Okay, unless there's an objection, we will take the agenda as published with the exception of 20B, which will be pulled for future discussion. Okay, let's take up item number 7. Courtney, come on up. Let's do Nevada Moves Day, and I'll move from this chair to the microphone. How are you this morning?
Doing well, thank you.
Moving well is what you should say. Moving well.
Indeed.
Courtney, let me read a proclamation. This is a proclamation for Nevada Moves Day, and it reads as follows. Whereas walking and bicycling to school provides children with the opportunity to have fun while developing lifelong healthy habits and safety skills. And whereas reducing the number of vehicles driving students to school results in increased safety, reduced traffic congestion, improved air quality, and less fuel consumption in the vicinity of schools. And whereas the benefits related to physical activity at an early age play a leading role in reducing rates of heart disease, diabetes, and other obesity-related health problems among children. And whereas children walking and bicycling to school together with parents and caregivers opens opportunities to mentor children about pedestrian and bicycle safety and its benefits related to health and the environment. And whereas adequate physical activity like bicycling and walking has been shown to lead to improvement in children's academic achievements, and whereas children, parents, and community leaders around Nevada are joining together to walk and bicycle to school on Nevada Moves Day on March 18, 2015. Now, therefore, I, Robert Kroll, Mayor of Carson City, proclaim March 18, 2015 as Nevada Moves Day in Carson City and encourage all of us to be active and to walk or bicycle our children to school. And if you don't have children, just walk anyway, while celebrating the benefits of increased safety and health this day and throughout the year. Courtney, please take this proclamation on behalf of all of us here, and then please tell us a little bit more about Nevada Moves.
Thank you,
Come
Mayor
on.
Kroll.
Okay.
Courtney Bloomer, Carson City Health and Human Services, Western Nevada Safe Routes to School Coordinator. This is the 6th observance of Nevada Moves Day, and we're pleased to announce that this is our biggest Nevada Moves Day ever for Western Nevada Safe Routes to School. We have 19 participating schools in Carson City and our neighboring counties of Lyon and Douglas County. The Safe Routes to School program has been working in Carson City for 3 years to promote bicycling and walking and other modes of active transportation among our students here in the community and for the community at large. As was mentioned in the proclamation, there are numerous benefits to getting our children active, and we are very excited to be working with other partners, other community agencies, the Sheriff's Office, Parks and Recreation, and Public Works to increase the walkability of our community and make it safe and fun for everyone to adopt healthy, active lifestyles. Thank you all.
Thank you, Courtney. It's going to be a good day. No questions, I guess. That's okay. Thanks for the comment there, and thanks for doing Nevada Moves Day, Courtney. Okay, are we ready to recess? We'll take up the Liquor and Entertainment Board, so we'll recess the Board of Supervisors, and we'll reconvene as the Liquor and Entertainment Board. And for the roll call, we'll recognize that the entire Board of Supervisors is still present, and we are joined by the Sheriff Ken Furlong. So we'll now take public comment under Liquor and Entertainment. Anybody on public comment for Liquor and Entertainment? I don't see any. Okay, then we'll take up item number 11, Community Development. This is the potential business license. I'm not certain I'm going to pronounce the name correct, so I'll let you do it. Okay, go.
This item is for possible action to approve Ms. Harry as the liquor manager for Siam Classic Thai Cuisine, LLC, liquor license number 15-30234, located at 4250 Cochise Street, Suite 40. They are applying for a dining room with beer and wine only, and staff is recommending approval.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the business and what you want to do? And I should disclose that I ate there on New Year's Eve. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. We have been open already 3 months and 3 days. Business is very good, and but we're waiting for beer wine license.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you're going to prohibit minors from consuming alcohol on your premises?
We will check everybody's license before we serve them the liquor. And
okay, questions? Anybody? I don't see any. Sheriff, recommend it?
They're good. We did discuss, they have not attended the liquor training yet, but they do intend on.
All right. Motion, Supervisor Abel, go.
I move to approve Ms. Harry as the liquor manager for Siam Classic Thai Cuisine, LLC, liquor license number 15-30234, located at 4250 Cochise Street, Suite 40.
Thank you.
Motion and a couple seconds on the motion. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Thank you. Go forth and make money. Thanks. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Now we'll take up Richard Tam, item 11B. Viet Pho, how are you doing? I'll disclose I eat there too, so. Very good. Okay.
Yeah.
Go.
I'm happy to be here today to apply for my...
Hang on, Lino. Let's go forward here.
This item is for possible action to approve Richard Tran as the liquor manager for Carson Best Pho Incorporated, doing business as Viet Pho, liquor license number 15-30522, located at 444 East William Street, Suite 6. He is applying for a dining room with beer and wine license, and staff is recommending approval.
How you doing this morning?
I'm fine, very fine, thank you.
How's business doing?
Okay. We opened the business for more than years now, and everybody start to know us, and the business pick up. That's the reason why I decided to offer more option for the customer. So actually, for now, we just serving the Vietnamese food, very healthy and and very good food. And Carson City is kind of small enough, so people know us slowly. But everybody come back and we make business. In fact, I have my first Viet Pho in Carson Street in 2006. And we closed 1 year later because of the conflict with my manager, and who runs away with my money. So we had a lawsuit with them. So now I decided to bring back my, healthy and good food for the people in Carson City. And thank you very much for everybody. I think that some of you try our food already.
Yeah, we have, I think.
Yeah.
So the other question is, we ask all the applicants coming up, what are you doing to preclude underage persons from consuming or buying alcohol?
That's the big question I also thinking about when I, apply for the license. And we're waiting for the alcohol managing cell that comes after the license. And I think that the first question is that we need to, check the ID of the customer. And the bigger things we scared because we serve on the table, and if the parents, give alcohol for the kids, come with them, But I think that the class will give us more knowledge about that. Yeah.
Very good. Board members? Sheriff, you okay? All right. Motion. Supervisor Bankowski, go.
I move to approve Richard Tran as the liquor manager for Carson Best Pho, Inc., DBA Viet Pho, liquor license 15-30522, located at 444 East William Street, Suite 6.
Motion by Supervisor Bankowski, second by Supervisor Abel. On the motion, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Thank you. You go forth and make money, too.
Yeah, thank you.
Good idea. Okay. All right. We're now on item number 12, public comment under liquor and entertainment. Concluding public comment. Anybody? Are we prepared to adjourn? We okay? All right. So unless there's an objection, we will adjourn as the Liquor and Entertainment Board, and we will reconvene as the Board of Supervisors, and we'll take up item number 15. Are we ready for this, City Manager? Oh, here we go.
Yes, we are, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. You need a minute to get set up?
Yeah, about 30 seconds.
Okay, Jamie, we'll just stand in place here. 30 seconds, go. Take your time.
Move to the donut.
Okay. Jamie, go ahead.
Okay. I appreciate you guys giving me the time. My name's Jamie Greer. I'm with the Nevada Department of Agriculture. I was here last year and I promised I'd come back to talk to you guys about noxious weeds and invasive plants. I am the Noxious Weeds Program Coordinator, so now I am doing not only grants and regulatory, but also weed-free, education and outreach, so weeds at the state level, that I am your contact. Today I want to go over just a review of the state statutes. I know last year I presented about noxious weeds in the statutes. Then I want to update you on what's been going on at a state level as far as noxious weeds and some activities. Then I want to look at Carson City in specific, what's happened over the last year. And lastly, talk about the needs for Carson City. Before I start, I just wanted to remind everyone that a noxious weed is actually a regulated plant. So these are invasive plants that aren't from here, and they cause major destruction in various ways. One, they're really difficult to control. Two, they reproduce rapidly. And three, they definitely can impact our ecosystems. So all the species you see up there are noxious weeds. Common ones we have in this area are the hoary cress and perennial pepperweed, also known as white top, some of the thistles, musk, Canadian thistle. Yellow star thistle is the yellow flower down there with the sharp spines, and knapweed, we have Russian knapweed in this area. So just a quick review of some of the statutes. Again, these are state statutes that are found in Nevada Revised Statutes, Chapter 555, that talk about these invasive plants. First, right off the bat, is every landowner is responsible for controlling noxious weeds. So that is in our statutes. That includes private all the way up to federal, county, city, everybody in between. Next, we are given the authority, the state quarantine officer, which is actually the director of the Department of Ag, to serve notice to landowners to control weeds. If we do serve notice, normally the notice is first education and outreach, first of all, because most of the time some people don't know that pretty flower is actually invasive. Then it would go increase in aggressiveness from there depending on the response that we get. The next part of the statutes say that if the landowner doesn't respond to our notice, the next step can be to do an abatement. And that's where the Board of Supervisors or the Board of County Commissioners would have to become involved. So if the state decides to do an abatement, it's actually in statute that the Board of County Commissioners are responsible to perform that abatement. So in other words, you would hire the private applicator to do the treatment. So this is all in the statutes, and like we discussed last year, we want, as far as the state, to just work with the counties on a first basis. We're not here, wanting to do a bunch of abatements, but knowing that pressures are increasing, to enforce our statutes, we want to make sure that we're setting ourselves up to where potentially we could. So then the Board of County Commissioners would proceed, and then control costs not paid by the landowner shall be a lien against the property. Now again, this is our statutes, this is what the statutes say, but most of the time we contact a landowner, they realize it's an invasive plant, and it wouldn't get down to this point. Also in statutes is the creation of a weed district. This is found in 555-202. And it does say that in some cases they see that controlling weeds by the local entities can be more successful. So can be best discharged through control by organized districts. And the next part, 555-203, says the Board of County Commissioners can create these weed districts. Right now in Nevada, we only have really these three that are the most active districts. We have one outside of Humboldt County in Paradise Valley. The other one is Diamond Valley Weed District outside in Eureka County. And then we have the Walker River Basin Weed District in parts of Lyon County. So these are local bodies. There's a weed district coordinator, and they are focused on helping their landowners control weeds.
What's the result of those? Are they work? They don't work? Are they active?
So these three are the most active, and they're working. The only and how they work is they actually can assess a levy. So they're getting some funding. So a landowner that's within the district boundary, they all pay, say it's from $50 to $100 a year to control weeds. Well, that is taken care of for them. Then the county, the weed district comes in, and they know the landowners that are signed in, the land parcels, and the weeds are getting controlled. So it takes the pressure off of the landowner. It's now on the weed district. In these areas, because it is very rural, it's a little easier, because it's a lot of, the conservation districts are active, the landowners all are mostly rural kind of ranchers, and so it's helping them to control weeds without, otherwise the cost of the landowner would be pretty large because they have large expanses of land. Also with the weed district, it does give then the weed district all the same authorities as the state. So no longer are you relying on the state to, come in and serve notices. That weed district coordinator can do all the same things that the state can do. So really just bringing it down to the local level makes it more successful because, I'm working statewide and I don't see all the weeds everywhere. So if there's a local person, it usually is more successful. So from there, those are basically the statutes. And I want to just give an update on what's been happening statewide. First, like I said, we still have large amount of pressure to enforce statutes from all different stakeholders. So hence why I'm here, and I'm going to continue to come back and talk about weeds. Some of the activities related to that is, like I said, I've been to all the county commissions, and really we need a local infrastructure for weed management for us to be more successful statewide. Next, we do have AB 77 that's in session now. It is revisions to our Chapter 555. Really, most of it was just cleanup because nobody had looked at the statutes for a while. But one portion of that that's in there is an addition of being able to assess civil penalties before it got to a lien situation, before abatements at time. So it gave another, ability for the state to kind of get people to pay attention before it's all of a sudden, holy cow, we have an abatement and then potential lien.
Jamie, in the case of a civil penalty, if this were to pass and you implemented a civil penalty on a landowner and they refuse to pay it, would then that also become a lien against the property?
I assume so, yeah, obviously.
And it seems like it might just exacerbate the problem.
Although it wouldn't be a large, sometimes if it gets to an abatement and all of the treatments are done, that's a pretty large bill that then the landowner's looking at. In our eyes, we're seeing, well, if we can entice them with, hey, please do something, otherwise you're going to get this fine of $50 is a lot less, cumbersome than a huge abatement and then lien. But it's something that I know Douglas County really recommended because they're getting to the point where, do we have to do an abatement? But maybe if we could just, if there was a threat of a fine, it would just spur people to do something before. Next, we did a statewide database. So we have edmaps.org. It shows all the distribution of the state noxious weeds. So this is important for us to compare counties to counties, new infestations, where are things going. And then lastly, we have the state plan for the greater sage-grouse was completed. So this is important because they listed invasive plants as one of the #1 threats to this species. So we know that if or when the sage-grouse gets listed, impacts to Nevada, all across the board are going to be pretty heavy. And this tells me that obviously the issues associated with weeds aren't going away. So again, this relates to us having increased pressure to enforce statutes for weed control. There was a weeds conference held in Ely, Nevada. There was over 100 people there, and the theme was catalysts for change. So this really showed that there's more momentum going as far as folks from private landowners all the way to counties and us at the state. And the Nevada Weed Management Association is kind of taking on a role to try to look at changing infrastructure across the board at the state, trying to get state funds that would go down to counties for actual weed programs in every county. So this is important because we really haven't had this discussion in quite some time. And then lastly, we did have an abatement that was performed in Douglas County. Douglas County has been our most aggressive county and kind of is serving as a model county. They also have a lot of landowners that definitely they go for weed-free certification, and so it's very important to them and their crop and their yields to control the weeds. This abatement actually was on a property that we'd been contacting for probably over 5 years trying to get controls, and it was a developer, out-of-state owner. And so we did one abatement on 15 acres, and that actually allowed access and controls to then be done over 650 acres. Without abatement, it was just, the landowners thought, oh shoot, maybe I have that weed too. So we looked at it as very positive as far as just getting more controls to be done. Next for Carson City. So we do have a Carson City Weed Coalition. You have had in Carson City this coalition that takes on the whole boundary of Carson. The goals of the coalition is to survey and map across jurisdictions. So we want to bring everybody together to be more successful at weed control. There's landowner and partner communication. So, I have this noxious weed, Carson Open Space, do you have it too? Let's make sure we're both working on it so that one of us isn't working and then it gets reinfested by, the adjacent property. There's cost shares for treatments. So in the past, this coalition was set up to where they got grant funding everybody could share that resource and prioritize that resource and cost share. So in the past, a lot of the golf courses were able to tap into this as far as getting herbicides or getting treatments at a lower cost. Tracking of spread for new infestations, which is obviously important so that we know, what's working, what's new that's coming in. Consolidated treatments. So a lot of times you could hire one contractor that was going to work on Carson City open space, one of the golf courses, and a private landowners. And if there's a private applicator that can cover a larger area and it's one contract, it was usually cheaper in the long run than if everybody hired that same guy. And then it was supported by funding from the Carson Water Subconservancy District, Nevada Department of Ag. This coalition has been successful in getting funding from us in many years. And then the Nevada Department of Environmental Protection as far as funding along the river. This is an example of some of the accomplishments just from NDA grant funding. So Margie Evans, she was the coordinator for the Carson City Weed Coalition, and this was from her reports. So this is, over 100 acres, over 1,000 acres surveyed, and this was actually with small amounts of money. But it was having a dedicated person and having all the folks working together in the coalition that allowed her to accomplish these. These numbers don't include what was already being done by all those individual agencies as well. So the coalition just allowed more to be done. Unfortunately, this past season, Margie Evans, she left and we weren't able to have a Carson City Weed Coalition coordinator anymore. So in 2014, we had, Carson City Open Space is doing their own work, so some weeds are getting treated, of course. Public Space, or Public Works is doing weed work. But we're missing the outside, private entities in this whole entire coordinated effort. So we don't have these additional, acres that are being surveyed or people and outreach activities that are happening as far as in this last 2014 season. So without the coordinator position, really the total overall acres in the Carson area, it kind of goes down because there's not somebody that is dedicated to look at weeds across all the jurisdictions, which is what the coordinator was doing with the Carson City Weed Coalition. There's less coordination, obviously, across property lines. So even though, maybe Carson City Open Space is working really hard in their infestation, they also have a lot of other job duties. And so the infestation that's across the property line or maybe down the river from there, maybe didn't know, there was lost coordination. And then loss of total funding allocated to weeds. So without a Carson City Weed Coordinator, the Carson City Weed Coalition this last year didn't apply for Nevada Department of Agriculture funds. There's also grant funding from the Carson Water Subconservancy District. So really, we saw just a loss of these outside funds that were coming into the Carson area without having a coordinator for this coalition.
Excuse me.
Yep.
Is that position going to be filled this year?
Well, that's what I'm actually here to talk to you about in my next thing. So the position was actually Margie Evans, and she used to be housed within Cooperative Extension. Now, Cooperative Extension didn't necessarily pay all of her salary. She got her salary from grants and, portions and kind of piecemealed it together to have salary for what she was doing. Unfortunately, with all the cuts with Cooperative Extension, they're unable to actually house that position anymore. So that's where we've talked with Carson City Open Space and Public Works, looking at that being a Carson City position, but then would still be, obviously supported by these outside funding sources. So really the needs for this next season, you've brought it up, is it going to get filled? And so we need a dedicated Carson City Weeds Coordinator, or somebody that's focused solely on weeds. And
Jamie?
Yep.
And maybe this is Ann's question. I look at this as management and part of what open space is about. Is there any way to work that into the budget such that through grants, applications, and so forth, we can actually take on someone to handle this as an outside contractor?
For the record, Ann Bollinger, Open Space Administrator. Since Margie Evans both left her position as well as the funding was cut from Cooperative Extension. Myself, Roger Mollendorf, and Darren Schultz in his office, we've gone round and round, how can we bring this back to the city? And as Jamie informed the board, that we have been still treating our weeds, but we're missing the golf courses, the prisons, the private property owners. I know there's weeds over by Home Depot, so we're missing that element. And we're so overworked, and we don't have the resources to work on those private properties. I don't know really if we should. And so we've gone round and round, how can we bring this coordinator position back? Presently, what the current discussion is, and with our new natural resource specialist, Rich Wilkinson, coming from the Dayton Valley Conservation District, we're working with that board. Can we share a position with them? With the subconservancy money, that $15,000 that's allocated to Carson City, can that go to Dayton Valley, funneled through that way, but the person actually spends 15 to 20 hours a week working in Carson City. We do have an office space in our Parks Department building, but we're still working through those details. But yes, we do feel that it's important. We're still just trying to work on that right now.
Is there any chance that this legislative session will allocate budgeted funds for cooperative extension? And second, were the funds taken, I understand it was a budget cut, but was that one of the theories of why that was done, is because this is a local issue, not a state issue?
As far as cooperative extension, I can't speak, I'm not completely up to date as far as what's happening in session, but from just folks that I work with on a bit regular basis, they don't seem optimistic that funding's coming back to cooperative extension in that sense. And Margie, for a long time, she wasn't relying on cooperative extension funds. She was relying on that space. And then she would go after outside funding anyhow. And she was funneling money through the conservation district just because then more money came to on the ground versus, indirect costs or that sort of thing. So at this point, I don't, again, I can't talk to what's happening in session for cooperative extension, but as far as people in the weeds world, we don't seem very optimistic that all of a sudden we're going to have more money allocated to cooperative extension for specialist type positions for weeds.
All right, go ahead. Thanks, Jamie.
So the other side of that is, allocation of funds specifically to weeds. Currently, Parks, Open Space, Public Works all individually allocate some funding out of their regular budget to weeds, but there's not, in the Carson City area, weeds line item or something specifically going to weeds. And surprisingly, like Ann mentioned, the Carson Water Subconservancy District allocates $15,000. Some of the grants that we used to allocate was anywhere from $5,000 to $15,000 to $20,000. So it's not, a lot, especially with all the local partners we have in this area. A little bit of money actually was getting stretched a very, very far distance. And so even if it was funding to support a position part-time, that still would get us to the point where we have that coordination back across boundaries. And then that's just, what we need for Carson is revival of the local level coordination. If we don't get to, if we have another season like last year where we had Carson City working just on their properties, the only other option would be for the state to get more involved. But like I've mentioned, the state, working from the state level is usually not as successful. And usually it's more formalized, sending notices. And really, if you have a person that can go and is from Carson and is talking to those Carson landowners, it's just more successful in the long run. So lastly, here's, NDA's activities and support for Carson. First and foremost, we do get complaints, and we will respond and receive those complaints, and if necessary, talking with Ann and all of your folks here in Carson, serve notices if it's a scenario where, treatments are being done adjacent to all around a landowner or land, property, and really there's not getting a response from the local folks. Well, that's where NDA comes in to help support. We don't want resources to be wasted if treatments are occurring one place and not another. 2, survey and mapping for new infestation or project areas. We do have a crew, and we'll collect data, and then we can pass that on to Rich or Ann as far as any other infestations that might not be on their radar that we find. Trainings, education, and outreach. Our Nevada Department of Agriculture, our pesticide program, they do trainings all the time as far as herbicide use or weed identification. You know, we're here to help as far as if there's a position that does become available. You know, there's a lot of local expertise here, but then also at the state level, we offer those trainings. And then availability of grant funds to support coordinator position or on-the-ground work to be completed. So every year we do offer up those grant funds, and this year it looks like I'll be able to do 2 different rounds. It is awarded competitively, but because there's such a good infrastructure with the Carson River, and we have entities from Alpine County all the way down to Churchill County working, you know, usually this area has been very successful to get those grant funds. And I want to just end with, these are just some of the logos of all the different partners that are still within the coalition. So it's not that, you know, we're saying, oh, Carson City should take on everything, the role of, you know, doing everything. We still have all these entities. It's just that coordination is what's missing between all of the different partners, where we think having a position that can at least sit within Carson City, really be working closely with Ann and the staff here, we'll see a little more success than maybe we did last year as far as looking at weeds as a whole. So with that, that's all I had to say today. If you guys have any other questions, please let me know.
Board members, anybody? Anything? Public? Any comments? Anything? Let me ask you one question, we have a piece of property in Carson City. It's on Highway 50 East, and I think the cross street, maybe Nye Lane. It's vacant, that has tumbleweeds.
Mm-hmm.
Do those qualify as noxious weeds?
It depends on if it is tumbleweed, the actual mustard species, then no. Or Russian thistle, sometimes people call that tumbleweed. That's not a noxious weed either. So we do have the 47 listed, and we have some field guide books, or we can send them over to you, but those are just common species. They're not listed as noxious.
Ann Bollinger, for the record. What I will add to that, though, Carson City has a municipal code, and I can't remember the number offhand, but that municipal code says landowners are responsible for nuisance weeds, so that would fall under that code. And Kevin McCoy.
We get complaints out there consistently. And I don't know, and I know that sometimes the landowner comes back and takes care of it. Other times it just seems like it's, for lack of a better word, a perennial problem.
And so Kevin McCoy in enforcement, if he's notified, that is something that he can cover in his duties.
Maybe while you're driving around in the open space, you could take a look at that piece of property and find out what you think, and then we can shortcut in a complaint and see if we can get ahead of it.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I know exactly the parcel you're talking about. I've met with a few of the homeowners. We have worked out a solution. They're very happy with it. That parcel on 50 East. So I'm personally tracking that one. And I got an update as recently as last week on it.
I should have known that the Marines would be ahead of it. Very good. Okay. Thanks, Nick, very much. All right. Come on up.
I'm Courtney Walker with the Carson Water Subconservancy District, and I just wanted to be here today just to let you know that we work in the whole Carson River watershed, and we supply $15,000 funding to each county specifically for weed treatment. So we're hoping that Carson City will be able to figure out how to get a position going, because I know we kind of got a year behind last year, and the weeds don't wait. So I just wanted to say
Thanks,
that.
Courtney. All right.
Thanks.
All right. Any other comments, questions? Okay, this is information only. I think it is. Unless there's further questions, we'll take up the issue as we go through, and I know the city manager and I know Open Space, they're looking at these issues, so. But thanks for the reminder.
Great.
Thanks for the
Yeah.
update.
Thank you for your time, and
Good
we
reminder.
appreciate your guys' support as far as all the weeds work that is here.
You bet. Okay, thanks again. All right, let's take up alternative sentencing, item 16. Tad, Mr. Fletcher.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and Board of
Good morning.
Supervisors.
What are we doing here?
I have a vacant position right now as a DAS tech, and I'd like to reclassify that position into a DAS officer to better fit the needs of the department. We do have a large variety of tasks that we have to deal with, and with this, I've currently restructured my staff to cover 7 days a week. However, they're working from 2 in the afternoon till 10 at night. So what I'd like to do is take this position and put them into the daytime hours to team up with either myself or the assistant chief and go out and do field contacts during the daytime when a lot of our people who work at night might be home during the daytime, and then backfill court duties and then help with drug testing and just fill in a lot of those kind of voids and then help at the front window when needed. So,
Can you do that without reclassifying a position or a person?
the DAS tech is a civilian position, so I can't take them out into the field. The DAS tech is more of the window, checking probationers in and out.
Board members. Okay, Supervisor Abad.
Hi, Ted. My question is, how is efficiency going to be affected if we didn't fund this? And secondly, if the long-term impact, over how many years are you projecting that cost?
On an average evaluation, it'll take roughly 10 to 11 years for the position to go from the bottom end of the pay scale to the top. And then if the position's not funded, there's different ideas I have where I could go out and use some of those funds for part-time staff and try to fill in voids that way. But with the full-time officer, I can use them. It's hard. I have part-time staff now, and every time I turn around, you call them and they can't work this day, but because their normal hours they're working Tuesday and Wednesday, but you need them on a Thursday and they're busy. So, you bet.
And the dollar impact to begin is what?
The remainder of this budget year, zero. Starting in July, it's going to be an additional $20,000 annually. The top end range is roughly $41,000, $42,000, but it's going to take roughly 10 years to hit that point.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So why don't you actually give us a little bit about what does a field tech do so that we can understand the importance of the position?
Okay. A field tech does, whenever people check in at the window, the field tech does our monthly probation check-ins. We have roughly 300 to 400 people that have to check in that first week of the month, so they'll check in people. They enter counseling reports, answer phones. Whenever officers submit for warrants, they'll finalize those and turn them into and just basically run them through the chain. But it's strictly the office duties. Our officers will fill in to assist them at different times, but the office tech themselves pretty much work just the front window doing check-ins. So.
Okay, but this position, you actually want to go into the field.
Right.
So I'll just disclose, I did a ride-along with your staff on one of those 2 to 10 shifts. They did a great job. So the position will actually then team up with someone else and be able to do day shift? Is that what you're indicating? So besides the 2 to 10 coverage that you currently have, this will allow you to do field checks on probationers and pre-release.
Right. I'll use them to cover for bailiffs and marshals in the courthouse. Through our MOU, we are tasked to do that. I'm going to use them for vacation relief, so if an officer calls in during the week time or goes on vacation, I can keep my guys in the field and keep our 7-day-a-week coverage. And then in the daytime also, we do struggle sometimes catching people at home. So we're hoping by having a team during the daytime hours, the 2 shifts communicate and they can go out in the daytime and maintain high levels of contact. So.
Morning, Ted.
Good morning.
Thanks for answering my previous questions. But basically what this position will allow you to do, because you function at a 7-day work week as it is, 24 hours a day, basically, correct? And so what this position will allow you to do is give you that latitude to fill in where you've been missing that extra officer out in the field. And that's basically what this does, is give you an officer more out in the field rather than in the office per se. Am I-
Correct. And it also help us build our on-call schedule. Right now, we have 4 of us take turns being on call 1 week a month for 7 days. And I would put that person into the on-call schedule to help spread that out, because it does get hectic when you get called 2-3 times a night on different contacts. But it will. I'm going to put that person, they're going to help in the office and go out into the field. I mean, we do a ton in the office too, between check-ins and drug testing and all that, but it'll give us the latitude to have another team in the field and also have someone inside the office.
And basically, from a presentation you gave before, you've really taken the initiative to help individuals go from where they were to bettering themselves, so they're not, I guess it's maybe that's not the correct word, but I mean, moving them forward in life. How many people does your department oversee, roughly?
At all the different levels of supervision, we have roughly, the numbers bounce from about 1,800 to 2,100 people each month that's through our program at different levels, from pretrial supervision to bail release to informal probation to court monitored to formal probation. We also oversee and assist with mental health court, the DUI third diversion program, and then this July we're going to be starting off the new misdemeanor addiction court and working with people on their addictions. So we do, and I have my officers when they go in the homes, making sure that people are actively seeking employment if they're not, working on their GEDs, trying to get a lot of people that can actually contribute back to the community when they get done. It's a task, but.
And what is that amount of individuals that you're checking on? What is your staff level right now that looks at that or oversees that? How many field personnel do you have right now?
I have 2 full-time and 2 part-time.
Thank you.
Ted, the tech position currently is vacant, correct?
Yes, it is.
So the officers are covering those duties in the office?
Yes.
Long-term, if you add another officer, do you think that is an adequate solution to handle the office duties, or do you anticipate that at some point in the future that you would need to come back and ask for a part-time tech to cover just office duties?
I have some long-term plans. I have a kind of a restructuring plan for the department, some areas where we're going to have some cost savings too. Some of them are my manager positions that I have that as they retire, I can backfill with the line level person and use some of that cost savings. I think it's going to be some work and time, but I believe over the next 3 years, I'm going to be able to get that org chart designed the way I want, and I think we'll be operating just fine. So.
Public comment? Anybody? Board?
Motion.
Okay, motion's in order.
I move to approve the reclassification of an alternative sentencing technician, CCEA grade 28 position to an alternative sentencing officer, FOP position, and approve an augmentation of the Department of Alternative Sentencing budget to cover the increase in costs.
Motion by Supervisor Abel, second by Supervisor Shirk on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Thank you very much, Tad.
All right, thank you.
Go back to work now. All right. All right. Let's take up item 17A, Terracon.
Morning, Mayor.
Morning.
Supervisors. Kim Bell, Purchasing Contracts, for the record. This first 17A is a contract number 14-15-142, a contract to provide special building inspections during the construction of the Multi-Athletic Center, or the MAC facility, in amount not to exceed $72,465 to be funded through the Quality of Life Fund. The Public Works Director is here to talk about the inspection services, what they entail, and if there's contract questions, I'm here to answer those.
Darren, come on up. City Manager, you're probably ahead of this too, but there was a letter to the editor, I think, about the cost of the MAC. I think it'd be helpful if we could put this on a website someplace, the actual breakdown of costs that we've come up with.
Will do, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Mr. Schultz.
Good morning.
Ever since that weed discussion, my allergies started up. Is that working for you guys? Darren Schultz, for the record.
Maybe
I'm here
we should
to
debate you.
Can get medical weed.
Well, that's a whole nother discussion. This item here before us has to do with special building inspections to do with our MAC project. I'm going to give you a little background here, and I hope I don't provide too much information, but enough. There has been several questions about why we're doing this or how we're doing it. As far as selecting Terracon, we do a request for proposals every 2 years for services that we anticipate that will come up through Public Works in the next 2 years, and we ask for qualified firms to submit to these proposals. They provide us their qualifications, project experience, their personnel, and then we form a committee for each and every one of these disciplines that we have asked for these qualifications for. The committees rank the proposals, and we generate a short list of firms that we feel are the best qualified to provide that type of work. Then over the 2-year period, when we have a need to use that type of a consultant or an expertise, we go back to that list we have generated, and we go through that list, and it's usually 1 to 3 firms on each list. And we go through that list, and we'll get a hold of the firm, we'll tell them the project we have, we'll ask them to submit a scope and then also a price. The list is created, there's no prices, we're not allowed to select based on prices. We have to only select based on qualifications. So when we actually have a project, then we'll bring the firm in, tell them what we need, they give us a scope, they give us a price, and if it's reasonable, we're in favor of it, then we bring it to you. If it's not, if the price is not acceptable to us, we feel it's not appropriate for the taxpayers, then we will reject their scope and their price, and we will go to the next firm on the list. That does happen at times. It's not very often, but it does happen. So the selection of Terracon or any other firm, that's the process that's gone through it. We cannot select them on price. We select them on qualifications only. So what we have here specifically is special inspections for the MAC. And special inspections, this is labeled special building inspections. We do special inspections basically on 90% of Public Works projects. The reason you don't always see them is because they're generally small contract amounts because it doesn't take a lot of work. Specifically, this project that's going on right out here, it's a water pipeline job. There's special inspections that are going on in that job too. It doesn't always come here because it's generally a small amount. The reason that this is a bigger amount is because for a building, the special inspections that are required are to a much higher level. We have to do more. As far as what a special inspection is, we're required by the building code to provide special inspections on our projects. That's if it's a private project or if it's a public project, you still have to provide special inspections on that project. The building department, they provide a certain level of inspections as well, and that's laid out in our building code. But above and beyond what our building department does, there is a special inspection requirement, and that is by code that we have to perform that. That's also by code by any private developer that builds a building. They too would have to hire a special inspector and have these inspections done, stamped by a professional, and then it gets turned into the building official. So it's the building official is, if you want to look at it, is kind of the judge and the jury, and the special inspection is kind of like the expert witness as the project goes forward, providing that information that it's being built right. So that's a background in a nutshell. Open to questions.
Got a couple here. I don't know.
Okay.
Darren, for the record, and to be clear, and considering the article that was in the paper today, is this a budgeted amount that was already allowed for in the overall bid amount for the project?
It is. It is. And to address that, we'll put it on our website. The contract that was awarded, that is for actual construction of the project being awarded to Miles Construction, which we did 2 weeks ago. That's the $7.7 million. This, as well as other services, doesn't get paid to the contractor. This is to manage the project during construction, is that those additional, what we call soft costs. This is part of our budget and fits within the amount of money that we have available. Yes.
Follow-up question on that. What you're saying is that this contract's not part of the $7.7 million contract, it's part of the $8.3 million estimate.
That's
for the whole project.
That's right.
Okay.
And that is budgeted.
Right. Can you run us through how the call-out service works on this? Because when you go through this, the proposal, it says that Terracon needs to be called out for each inspection, but when you look at the work schedule, they're actually on site anywhere from 25 to 75% of the time, or in one case, 100% of the time. So can you walk us through that process? Do we have to call them every single day, or do you sit down and schedule out the inspections?
I will. That's a very good question. So how it works is throughout the project, throughout the construction, depending on the actual type of work that they're doing on the building at that time, will warrant how much time the special inspection is needed. Like I say, special inspections are required by code. So, for instance, as we're starting the project now, we're doing a bunch of over excavation. We're removing 5 or 6 feet of dirt that is bad dirt, and we're bringing in good material. So as that 5 or 6 feet gets built up to where we can put a foundation on it, that material, it's critical what's underneath the structure. So that material is required to have special inspections. So there's somebody out there, Terracon will be out there to make sure that as they put in a layer of material and then they put geofabric over the top and they put another layer of material and geofabric, as that is being built up, somebody that has a certification to inspect that, to make sure, a professional, that that is being put in right, will be out there the whole time the work is going on, from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day. But once that work is all done and they've signed off on it, stamped and said it's good, then Terracon will go away. And then we'll call them back when we have like, for instance, when the block goes in, the block walls, that also has to have special inspections. So we'll call them back, and the way that will work is after the contractor gets a course up to where there's something to inspect, we call Terracon and we say, hey, we're going to need you Thursday for 4 hours in the afternoon. Come on down, and that's how they'll bill their time appropriately. As the project moves forward, like I say, some days they're there 8 hours a day, some days they're there for 1 hour, just based on the requirement of what special inspection has to be done.
So Terracon also requested a contingency, a 25% contingency amount allowance for overtime as part of the budget, and that is not included in this contract. Can you explain how you're going to manage that so that we don't run into additional overtime fees?
I can. That is, a lot of our consultants like to put that in their proposals, but the way that we do this, and that what we bring to you is we look at the project from the top down, all the way, what's this project going to take for special inspections, all inclusive? And we come up with this number that we bring before you. That is inclusive of days where Terracon, we feel the contractor's going to be working a 10-hour day and we have to pay 2 hours of overtime to Terracon. That's in this number. It's all inclusive there. So we do the best we can when we're working on that scope and fees to make sure that that's all accounted for. So I do not anticipate having to come back and say there's an extra or we didn't have enough money. I mean, we've looked at that and we've established this budget will cover that.
And my final question, there's a minor conflict in the timing for billing between the scope of work and our contract, and you and I talked about that. Can you just explain how you go through that process and make sure that there's no discrepancy or misunderstanding about when we have to pay?
Yes, the Terracon puts in there that, payment has to be made within this amount of time in their scope. But ultimately, Terracon will sign, after the meeting today, they will sign a contract with us that tells them exactly how we will pay and what we will pay. So everything will go back to the city's contract, not necessarily to what they put in, what we call just general verbiage of what their requirements are, that sort of thing. We pay off of the contract that we will sign with Terracon. And those 30-day, those time limits are all by state law that we have in ours. Yep.
Supervisor Shirk, then go back to Supervisor Abad.
Yeah, thanks for answering my earlier email questions today. Thank you. This contract was not part of the original overall contract because it's separated because of the dollar amount? Or why is it separated from the original contract and not part of the whole structure?
The last contract that we did 2 weeks ago was for the construction of the project. This is a contract for somebody to work for us to make sure, to inspect that project is being built properly as an expert, and stamping saying it was built as required by our code, by our building department. It's a requirement there that has to be done. So it wouldn't be fair to ask our contractor. I mean, we could ask them to do it, but they would just turn around and put this price in their bid, but then the contractor is controlling the special inspector, and that's not a good idea.
Okay. And then, like the water main you mentioned out here, that inspection was part of the contract. Is there a dollar amount that separates it?
It wasn't part of the contract, the water contract out here. The construction contract with SNC was the number that came to you and you approved. The special inspection is, once again, it was separate, just like this. But it didn't come to you because it was, I think it was $8,000. They didn't have to do a lot of special inspection on that job.
Well, that's what I meant. Is there a dollar separation that it doesn't have to come to us? Is there, for my information?
Yes, it's $50,000.
And work is going on. Is there any inspections going on out there at the Boys and Girls Club now? Because there's work going on there now.
There is inspection going on by the city, by city staff, but it's not being done. There's no special inspections going on yet.
Thank you.
Yep.
Darren, my question is about accountability. Is the Terracon accountable for the decisions that they make in terms of the inspections? Because for some inspectors, that is not the case. So I just want to verify.
That's a very good question, too. And that really comes in when we review their proposals every 2 years. And in those proposals, they put in, history with Carson City. We worked with them, but also history with other agencies. So it's a small enough community to where we understand our consultants, and if they're not accountable or they have problems or we found off they've signed off on something they shouldn't have, we know about that, and we're not about to award a contract to them.
Darren, is there a reason this fund should be paid out of the quality of life and not out of the general fund, since, as you mentioned, the Terracon is representing, or they're being hired by the city to oversee this project? Why is the funding coming out of quality of life and not out of per se, the general fund?
The reason is it's a project cost. To build the MAC, this is a project cost. If you didn't have this, you couldn't build the MAC. So it's one and the same. Just for instance, our water line out here, utilities, water is paying for the pipe to go in the ground, but they also need to pay for that special inspection to make sure that pipe is right. It wouldn't make sense to move, the funding around to somebody else to pay for it. It's a project cost.
Thank you.
Hi. I just want to make sure, I've noticed in several proposals that the vendors give us, this proposal is valid only if authorized within 60 days. So if we're beyond the project time, have you already verified they're going to sign this contract at this amount today?
I am.
I noticed this I guess we're not that timely to get all
You're
these done.
It happens a lot. It happens a lot. That's general verbiage in their contracts, but we always check before we go to the board, to you, to make sure that we're good.
So it's not going to come back going,
That's
you
right.
won't sign
That's
it?
right.
Okay.
Good catch.
Other board comments or questions? Public? I don't see any. Okay, motion's in order. Supervisor Abad.
I move to approve contract number 1415-142 pursuant to NRS 332.115 subsections 1B and NRS 625.530 with Terracon to provide professional services for special building inspections for the multi-use athletic center facility in an amount not to exceed $72,465 to be funded from the Quality of Life Fund new gymnasium account as provided in fiscal year 2014-15 and fiscal year 2015-2016.
There's a motion by Supervisor Abel, second by Supervisor Bunkowski on the motion. Discussion.
Yes.
Discussion's in order. Oh,
I just want to clarify my vote. I'm going to vote in favor of this, although I did not vote in favor of the one in sales tax and the quality of life to build the MAC. This is a necessity. Since we are moving forward with the project, this is something we have to do, is have the inspection, so I will be voting in favor of this.
on the motion, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried. Thank you very much. Thanks to the board. Okay. All right.
This is a contract, this is item 17B. This is a contract to determine that Fire Construction Corporation, doing business as Resource Development Company, is the lowest responsible bidder, and to award the contract 1415-126, titled Ash Canyon Water Tank Repaint. And total contract amount is $212,786 for the base bid, base Schedule A, plus the additive alternates. Schedule B is $35,000 with a contingency of $25,274 for a total amount to be $273,060, not $273,000. This project's to be funded through the Capital Project Construction Water Fund. This project, we had 6 bidders. The engineer's estimate was $245,000. So we're under the engineer estimate currently with the total amount. The project.
I didn't understand that one. Say that again, please. I didn't.
The engineer's estimate, when we go out to bid, we have an engineer's estimate. Engineer's estimate was $275,000. So we're under,
okay.
The bid amount is under the engineer's estimate.
All right.
If there are specific questions on the project, Danny Rotter with Public Works here to discuss that. If there's specific questions on the contract, I can answer those in the bidding process.
Mr. Rotter, come on up. I've got some questions. And Kim, hang around. Why are we doing this?
Danny Rotter, Public Works. For the record, good morning. Steel tanks inevitably will rust and fall apart. So as a part of an ongoing maintenance program with our tanks, and every year we budget a certain line item and we try to maintain all of our tanks. Generally, it's probably a 10-year cycle. I think this one's probably a little bit longer than that since it's been recoated. Has some rust showing, and we want to make sure that that gets painted and coated and to consider that asset to extend its life for quite a while.
Danny, on the bids, noticing that Fire Construction under line item number 4, interior disinfection, they're considerably lower than all of the other bids. Is that a concern?
Well, they still have to meet the specifications. So sometimes they'll drop one light on them lower and then raise one, but they're still going to have to meet those disinfection specifications, and we'll be on site to make sure those happen.
Danny, Fire Construction is considerably under all of the other bids, and I believe that they've done some work for Washoe County. Is that correct?
They've done some work for Washoe County as well as Truckee Meadows Water Authority.
Did you or anybody else in Public Works get a chance to talk to Washoe or Truckee Meadows to see if they were satisfied with the work? Because it's always concerning when you have one contractor that's significantly below everybody else.
I haven't specifically called them directly, but we do have one of their painting superintendent that was on site has actually done work for us before. And so some of the guys that have been here in the past, when he was on site, said, hey, George works for them, and he did a real good job on a couple of our other tanks. So after a few discussions in-house and some of the projects we've seen that group has done, we feel pretty comfortable.
And how long will the tank be out of service, and will it affect water delivery service to residents?
It'll be out of service. The goal is to get it up before June, get it all painted, coated, disinfected, ready to go before June. So the Water Operations Division has planned for that, and it shouldn't impact their schedules, and the goal is to get it up before the peak summer demand.
Public comment? I don't see any. Board, we all ready from Supervisor Bonkowski?
I move to determine that FAR Construction Corporation, DBA Resource Development Company, is the lowest responsive and responsible bidder pursuant to Nevada Revised Statute, Chapter 338, and to award contract number 1415-126 titled Ash Canyon Water Tank Repaint to FAR Construction Corporation, DBA Resource Development Company for a base bid amount of $212,786, plus both additive alternates totaling $35,000, and a contingency amount not to exceed $25,274 for a total contract amount of $273,060 to be funded from the Capital Projects Construction Tank Maintenance Project 041302 account in the Water Fund as provided in fiscal year 2014-2015 budget.
Second.
Motion by Supervisor Bonkowski, second by Supervisor Abel on the motion. Discussion? Just by way of discussion, I would assume, and I know that we will be watching for change orders as we go through this to make sure that these bids stay the way they are, or unless there's an absolute difference. So I got it. We're on the motion. Doug, I got it. On the motion, all in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Thank you. Okay. Let's take up the next one, 17C.
This is to approve contract number 1415-144, which is a joinder contract for the purchase and installation of equipment and services from Stanley Convergent Security Solutions through the State of Nevada WSCA NAS PO Cooperative Purchasing Organization in the amount of $200,000 to fund the jail lock intercom project. This project is $200,000 to be funded through capital outlay jail lock intercom project account and from the SCAP improvement account. This project we brought to the board previously through a separate contract. Through the contractor was not comfortable with our contract language and suggested we use the WSCA contract that they had with the state. They had some clauses that their indemnification they wanted to change, and the state had their indemnification clause. This contract was reviewed by our district attorney's office, and we have any questions on the reasoning behind or any other questions, we can answer questions.
So the dollar amount stays?
The dollar amount's the same. It's just a separate contract. We're doing a joinder
Help me
contract
understand
with the
what the
state.
difference was, if you could, please.
The indemnification clause, and they also had
I got the indemnification clause, but what about the indemnification clause, if you can articulate that for me?
The contractor, in this case, Mr. Mayor, had come back after the board had approved the contract we brought last meeting with language that their attorney wanted changed and inserted into a couple of the clauses. One of them, obviously, is the indemnity clause. We were not comfortable with that. We did not agree to make the changes. At that point, the contractor notified us of this joinder contract, which we thought would be the most effective way to not only protect the taxpayers, but also be able to provide this important upgrade for the sheriff and the jail. This is the first time, typically, well, not typically, every single time since I've been city manager, we've contracted directly with the contractor. This is the first joinder contract, but I think in this circumstance, it works well and it provides the protections we need.
Okay. Think about that for a moment. Thank you very much, Supervisor Bonkowski.
In addition to the indemnification clause, there's a couple of other differences between the contracts. One is that the state contract does not have a termination clause except for cause, and it also does not have a non-appropriation clause. So are there any concerns with not having those items included in the contract?
Yeah, Supervisor Bunkowski, this is a relatively short-term contract. We're comfortable with that aspect of the joinder contract. This contractor has performed work, throughout the state, and really due to the relatively short duration of it, we're comfortable with it.
Is there a central database to be aware of joinder contracts? Because obviously we were not aware that this joinder contract existed.
The Department of State, on their purchasing contracts website, they have a listing of all their WSCA contracts. We weren't aware, there's, any number of categories. We didn't know that this contract was available until they pointed it out to us. Because there's probably between 100, 200 contracts on their website that, for different sources, they have anything from telephone services to car rental services, hotel, and they also have like the airline contracts also. So that is available for us to joinder onto.
So would there be a cost-effective way to be able to cross-reference our ability to contract directly with a vendor and to look at a joinder contract first to see if there is a joinder contract, and then
Normally
to compare
we
those?
do that. Normally that's part of, like, Public Works does allow that with their purchasing of their vehicles and equipment. They use a lot of the joinder contracts through the state. But in this circumstance, we were unaware of that contract. This was a contract, like you said, we were going directly with the contractor, and they had gotten the proposal directly from the contractor and from another vendor to provide those services. This contractor was $200,000 less than the other contractor that they got the quote from, so we were moving forward with that. And then because of the contract languages that they had issues with, which included they had a problem with their insurance company would not notify companies of cancellations of the policy, and that's part of our contract, and they said their insurance company wouldn't sign off on it, so that was.
Let me make a comment too. I think for the record, Nick Providenti, Finance Director, typically we won't look for a joinder contract unless there's a reason for us to look for a joinder contract. And typically you're only looking for a joinder contract if you don't really want to bid something out if it's already been bid out, and you don't want to take the time or the effort to do the bidding if it's already been bid out by the state. In this case, there really wasn't a need to do a joinder contract because it's basically exempt from bidding anyway, and we just typically contract directly with the actual vendor. And we just couldn't agree on the terms, and they suggested at that point, well, we have a joinder contract with the state, let's do that. So it's not really saving us any money or doing anything different. It's just we couldn't agree on the terms, and we think this is like City Manager Morano said, in the best interest of the taxpayers. So.
And I understand what you're saying, Nick, and thank you for those additional comments because they're clarifying. My question though is, do you think that there is room to save money for the city if we have knowledge of all the joinder contracts out there? In this particular case, it's the same price either way, whether we contact directly or go through the joinder contract. My question is there an opportunity to save money by knowing about joinder contracts, or do we have a system in place where we can compare those two amounts to see if there's savings or not?
Right.
On the currents of like our purchasing of vehicles and equipment, to do all the specifications for the vehicles, and as far as time and effort to put together the bid specs and then go out to bid, the going and doing a joinder contract is more cost effective and does prove to be more efficient and does save us money in the long run because all that groundwork has been laid and all the information has been provided.
So I think the answer to your question is it depends on what we're actually wanting to contract for. So in certain instances, it is like Kim was saying, if you wanted to buy vehicles, you go on the state, and join on those contracts because they've already bid these out. But for something like this, we're not necessarily sure that that there is a way to kind of save money because we typically contract directly with, with the vendors. So I think there is a way, but it just kind of depends on what we're actually contracting with the vendor for.
So it may be that for actual product, the jointer contract system is a better way to go, but for services,
Typically,
maybe not.
Right, because typically if you're buying something, you want to get the best price. For services, you still want to get the best price, but then you're also evaluating services and those types of things as well, so.
All right, thank you. And then my last comment is that this contract replaces a previously approved contract that was never signed.
Correct.
So when we get ready to make the motion, I would like to add some language to clarify that this is a replacement of a previous contract.
That's fine.
Supervisor Shirk. Wait a minute, DA?
Mayor, through you to Supervisor Bonkowski, if you could just clarify, though, the contract was never entered into. It was just the approval to enter into a contract?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Jim.
And then, Kim, if you could just clarify on the funding sources, it said 60,000 is coming from the machine equipment, SCAAP capital improvement, and then at the last sentence, it says the 60,000 is coming from the grant account. Can you just clarify that?
Actually, the 60,000 is the SCAP improvement account in the grant fund. So the 60,000 are SCAP funds, and those are dollars that the sheriff gets for housing illegal aliens in the jail. So we've got $60,000 in those funds to be used for the project, and the other 140,000 is coming from our general government capital fund. It's the same funding as you approved for that last contract.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Adriana, is there any, the indemnity provision is included on the attachment to this document, right?
Yes, it is. It's actually in the contract itself.
That indemnity mentions it goes to the state, and the state is defined under definitions as a state that's political subdivision. It says it means the state of Nevada and its state agencies. Are you comfortable that we're included under the?
Yes, because it actually defines it as municipalities as well.
Okay. I didn't see that, but that's okay. I'll take your word for it.
It was at the very beginning, and I can show it to you, but I do feel comfortable with the language.
You're comfortable with it? Okay,
Yes.
fine. All right. Any public comment? Okay. Motion's in order.
I move to approve contract number 1415-144, a jointer contract replacing previously approved but unexecuted contract 1415-127 for the purchase and installation of equipment and services pursuant to NRS 332.115 subsection 1M from Stanley Convergent Security Solutions, Inc. through State of Nevada WSCA-NASPO Cooperative Purchasing Organization in the amount of $200,000 to be funded from the Capital Outlay Jail Lock Intercom Project account in the Capital Projects Fund for $140,000 and from the Machinery and Equipment SCAAP Improvement Account in the Grant Fund for $60,000 as provided in fiscal year 2014-2015.
Motion by Supervisor Bonkowski, second by Supervisor Shirk on the motion. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. All right, let's take up item 18. Mr. Burkett of the Community Source Water Protection Plan. We're going to try and make the 10:30 specific time, but we'll see where we go here.
Good morning.
Good
David
morning.
Burkett, Carson City Public Works. What we have here is we're asking for adoption of a resolution for the adoption of the Community Source Water Protection Plan. And this is not a new program for us. It's really an update. We had a 1999 wellhead protection program, and we're just updating it to some new standards. And what I'd like to do is have Kim from the state, Nevada Department of Environmental Protection, talk about the Integrated Source Water Protection Plan. And then the consultant who helped us through this is Jill with Resource Concepts, and just kind of describe what we went through and what the plan means.
Good morning to both of you. Welcome to the state of Nevada. Come on.
Raise it up. I'm a little taller.
Kim Borgsener for the record. I'm with the Nevada Division of Environmental Protection, Bureau of Water Pollution Control, and I'm the state coordinator for the Integrated Source Water Protection Program. And I'm going to be as brief as possible. I don't want to go into the technical aspects of the plan and all the hoopla behind that, but I want to do is give you the highlights of what the plan is and why Carson City participated and what the state's role is. And then I'll turn the time over to Jill to explain what the Carson City plan is looking to do. Okay, so the plan is essentially a plan that looks at all the public drinking water sources that are regulated by NDEP, so all the public water systems here that we oversee. And what we're doing is taking a look at the areas above the ground surface that might have an influence on the water quality that comes from those drinking water sources, from the wells and the springs and the intakes and those sorts of things. And we develop a team, a local team, to start looking at strategies that we can do and implement to prevent contamination events, to adequately protect those wells from becoming contaminated by human-caused activities. So we don't address things like existing arsenic or existing contamination issues. We just try to strategize what can we do as a community to better protect those sources so that they don't become inadvertently contaminated. So we've done this planning effort. First of all, I should say, this is 100% funded through an EPA grant. It's a voluntary local program. It's mandated that each state have a program in place for their state, but the state of Nevada has chosen to make it a voluntary program for the local communities. So all of our counties participate on a voluntary basis. And one of the other things that's important to know is that we invest a lot of grant funding into each community. We went to the county-wide approach to ensure that all the water systems in those communities would have an ability and resources to participate. So it's really a partnership. It's not just a Carson City plan, it's all the water systems that are located in Carson City. And that's really important for us, the state, to reach all of the public water systems statewide. So we've kind of worked up the Carson River watershed. We started with Douglas County, and we moved into White Pine County, or I'm sorry, not White Pine, that's way east. Douglas County, Carson City, Lyon County. Once the plan is approved here, we've also started to move into Churchill County, which we should pretty much cover the entire watershed, and so that's going to be a proud moment for us. We're also moving into Churchill County. We've done Nye County and White Pine County, and all of our counties have unanimously approved these plans across the board. They see the potential in these plans. Over the last couple of years, since October 2012, we've invested through a third-party contractor approximately $160,000, dollars in grant funds to this planning effort for just plan development. And we've invested about $45,000 so far in already implementing some of the strategies in the plan. Again, 100% grant funded. So that's nice to bring that money back into the community. What's the state's role in this planning effort? You're probably wondering, well, how are we going to use this plan at the state level? What we do is we use the technical data that's collected. I'm sorry?
Hopefully it's not going to be used to give us a fine.
Well, since it's a voluntary program, I don't think I'd have that kind of hammer. What we do is in my particular group, we have a groundwater branch statewide, and so what we like to do is use the data to figure out how we can better incorporate it into decision-making at the state and share that information with other agencies so that we can make better decisions as far as permitting, where we locate certain facilities, technical reviews of subdivision plans. If we know that we have some type of facility coming into one of these areas, it's easier for us to give them direction or special conditions if we know that they're in a sensitive drinking water area. So that helps us at the state. We don't give sensitive data, such as well locations and that sort of data, to any other outside parties unless they request it, and then we send them directly to Carson City or the local community to make sure that we're able to share that data first. So there's a lot of security around a lot of the information because it is sensitive data, well locations and how wells are constructed, where their water is coming from, and those sorts of things. So we do keep a lot of that secure at the state. So. And my role personally on the team was just to provide some perspective. You know, I work in all the different communities, and they're all doing different things. And so on the team, I'm able to share some of those ideas, and some of them work really well with different communities, and some of them are like, no, that's not going to work where we're at. So it's really just to give perspective to make sure that the plan meets state endorsement criteria so that we can provide additional funding into the future for some of the proposed projects. So with that, if you have any questions, if not, I'll turn the time over to Jill so she can talk a little bit more about.
I don't see anybody up here,
Carson
but
City.
thank you. Very articulate.
Okay.
Jill, come on up.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Jill Sutherland with Resource Concepts. Resource Concepts was hired under contract with the state to facilitate development of the plan and also provide technical assistance with the more technical parts of the plan. So we went through a series of steps through the planning process to develop. First step was kind of to form a team. Its members are mostly staff from Carson City, as well as representatives from the other public drinking water systems in the area and other local stakeholders. Then we collected data on groundwater in Eagle Valley and also the public water system as it exists today. There's been quite a few changes in the last 15 years. Once we had all that data sort of collected on the wells and the groundwater conditions, we ran a series of models to kind of reflect which areas within the valley are the sources of our drinking water. From that mapping effort and modeling effort, we built GIS databases to produce mapping of all different layers that we could overlay with land use or zoning, other infrastructure. And that data gives the planning team a tool with which to kind of look at what the conditions are in the valley and try and update the strategies that already existed in Carson City in your old wellhead protection plan. The team sort of looked at everything. A lot of the strategies, they decided we'll just continue to do this. You had a very strong wellhead protection plan in the late 90s and early 2000s. There are some new things that also came out of the plan that they want to move forward with it going into the future. The last sort of step of the plan, we came up with a list of action items to consider implementing over the next 5 to 12 year time frame, depending on their priority. And the very final step of the plan is to bring it forward to the board and request you to adopt it, at which point the state can endorse it. Thank you very much.
Brett, we have a question, Jill. Hold on.
Yeah.
I have a couple of questions for you, actually. On page 2 of the plan, it references the California on our east border, which would actually be Utah, but they mean to the California to the west border.
Yes, and I'm currently facing north.
And then the same on page 17 of the plan?
Yes. There is an errata in the directions in the plan, some compass directions that we've got wrong. We'll go ahead and modify that. And I believe the resolution allows for minor corrections to the plan over the next 5-year period, and we're hoping that you can adopt it with those changes.
And then one technical question. The plan calls for 2-year, 5-year, 10-year, and 25-year source water protection area data points. Mm-hmm. And I see the implementation of the data from the 2, 10, and 25-year plans, but I don't see any implementation of the 5-year data points. So I'm just curious why they're being collected. Is that just a state requirement? Or is there actually something going to happen with those data points at some point?
The state does have certain criteria that they outline for developing a plan that they can endorse. They require you to take a look at the 2, 5, and 10-year sort of times of travel to your well for groundwater. In addition, the city's previous plan looked at a 25-year capture zone. So we've included in the modeling and the 2, 5, and 10. I think the planning team didn't feel that the 5-year capture zone, they had no specific implementation items associated with that sort of management area. Nevertheless, it's reflected in the plan, and it kind of provides an additional tool for in the future to look at if you did have some potential or you did have some contamination in your groundwater, is it within a 5-year capture zone? And it gives you an idea of what the risk to some of those wells might be. Thank you.
Comments, questions? Public comment? Morris, come on up. Mr. White, excuse me.
Morning, Mayor, Board. For the record, Morris White. I'd like to get some clarification as to what open space staff might be doing. If you look at Appendix B on page 61, it says there that open space would be doing assessments within the 2-year source water protection areas. If you go to then Appendix E on page 7, it indicates that open space staff will be working on the 25-year source water protection area. So I'm wondering if we can get some clarification as to what they might be doing.
I don't know if we have the answer to that right here, but Jill, you want to give it a shot, and if not, we'll have somebody answer it for you after the meeting here.
Thank you.
I think this is one of the new and really exciting things that have been brought into the plan. The previous plan just looked at wellhead protection. The current plan looks at source water protection, and one of the sources of Carson City's drinking water, although a lot of people don't realize it in the community, is surface water. And that was something that the members of the team brought up as an issue. You know, are we, and it's mostly in areas on the eastern front, west of Carson City, where we have surface waters that have direct intakes for the water system. And so open space was kind of brought into the planning effort because there may be some activities that you may want to consider managing when they're in the immediate area around those surface water intakes. Trails, fires, car accidents that affect those surface water sources.
Very good. Okay. Other public comment? Board, ready for motion?
Do we have a resolution number?
Resolution number?
2015 R12.
You want to do it, Jim?
Sure. I move to approve.
I move to approve resolution number 2015-R12 to adopt the Community Source Water Protection Plan for the Public Works Systems in Carson City, December 2014.
Motion by Supervisor Shirk, second by Supervisor Bonkowski on the motion. Hearing discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Okay, let's take up the sewer bond issue, 19A. Thank you, Mr. Burketta. Thanks to the state. Tell your folks back at the state did a very articulate presentation. Okay.
Good morning again, Mayor. For the record, Nick Providenti, Finance Director. We're asking you to adopt a resolution of intent proposing the issuance of and authorizing the publication of notices relating to general obligation sewer bonds. Just a brief background. On January 15th, the board adopted a resolution notifying the Debt Management Commission of our intent to issue these bonds. On February 10th, the Debt Management Commission met and determined that pledged revenues will be at least equal to the amount needed for principal and interest, which is basically their duty in all of this. And this is the next step in the process, issuing the notices, issuing the 90-day publication notices that we're planning on issuing general obligation revenue bonds. So if there's any questions, we have representatives from Sherman and Howard here for legal questions, or I can answer questions.
Supervisor Bonkowski.
Just a clarification. I've gotten some emails about this item, and there is a perception in the public that this is an additional expenditure to the water treatment facility, which is not the case. This is part of the rate increase plan that was already implemented by the board, and part of the upgrades that have been planned for. We're just at that point in the process where we're issuing and approving the bond sale. So just so the public knows, this is not additional cost to the city. This is part of the plan that we've been working on now for almost the last 2 years.
You're nodding, and the answer to that is yes.
Correct.
For the record?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Other board comments? Public comment? Motion's in order. Supervisor Abad.
I move to adopt resolution number 2015 R13, a resolution of intent proposing the issuance of and authorizing the publication of notices relating to general obligation limited tax sewer bonds, additionally secured by pledged revenues for the purpose of financing sewer projects for the city, providing the manner, form, and contents of the notices, authorizing the city manager or city finance director to arrange for the sale of the bonds, and providing other matters properly related thereto, and providing the effective date hereof.
Motion by Supervisor Abad, second by Supervisor Bonkowski. On the motion, discussion, Supervisor Shirk.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, I did not vote in favor of the rate increases. I know this is a process that we're moving forward with the project, and in respect to that, I will be voting in favor of this because it is just the process for which this board, other members voted on and in favor of, and it's moving forward, so I will vote in favor of this.
Okay. On the motion, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Thank you again. Okay. All right, let's take up
Bravo.
Bravo, 19 Bravo. Anybody have any
19
questions
Bravo.
with respect to Mr. Providente's report on the condition of each fund? Anybody? Public? Motion's in order.
I move to accept the report on the condition of each fund in the Treasury and the statements of receipts and expenditures through February 24th, 2015, per NRS 251.030 and NRS 354.290.
Motion in a couple seconds. On the motion, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Let's go to 20 Alpha. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
We see a lot of different wall things here today. Why don't you explain what's going on?
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Mayor and the board. I'm Sharon Ross with Capital City Arts Initiative, and I want to thank Nick Morano and the city staff for inviting us to use the Sierra Room as an arts venue. I hope you like. We're pretty delighted with it. From Vern Cron's email in late January to hanging the work on February 26th, all happened very fast. Usually an art exhibition is a year, 18 months, even longer in planning, and we pulled this one together very quickly. We had a couple of Ron's pieces left over from hanging his work in Conference A at the Brick, and Strummel Gallery had a show of his work in December, and they hadn't returned it, so we were able to borrow. So presenting art in accessible to the public in accessible venues fully fits our mission, and we love that. We're delighted. So thank you very, very much. Ron lives and paints in Tuscarora. He's a plein air painter, which means he paints outdoors, including the snow scenes, which are my particular favorites. He has an exceptional eye. We're delighted to launch this art venue with his work, and I hope you, from your vantage point, that you enjoy looking at it. In his art statement, he says he wants to ultimately express a feeling of place, and I think expressing a feeling of place is something that Carson City is really looking to do, so maybe we'll learn a little bit from Ron's work. We're planning 2 to 3 exhibitions a year in here, so Ron's work will be up through June 30th as of today. That's what we're planning. CCIA has provided him with an honorarium. We pay all of the artists that we work with. And, okay, I'm going to read you one sentence, if you forgive me. Presenting the arts helps foster imagination, creativity, and an expanded worldview that adds to a fuller education and a richer life for individuals and for the local community. So, thank you very much. Do you have any questions?
Supervisor Abad.
Sharon, I just want to say thank you for providing something very refreshing for us to look at.
Right.
You're most welcome.
I would second that. It's really nice to look out there and see the art.
Good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I think it's a benefit to all of us up here.
Well, good.
Just one other comment, too. The pieces are actually for sale, correct?
Always.
Right.
All the art's always for sale. So, yes. And prices are on the title card, so let me know if you want to purchase. Thank you very much.
All right, Sharon, thank you very much. Okay, any public comments on this issue? Board. Let's see, what do we do here? This is
Coming up on a second reading.
All right, now let's, we pulled item 20B. Let's take up the last one before we break. Let's take up the zoning change for the 608 and 610 West Washington Street in development. Disclosure to make, and then I'll go.
On item 21A, NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose conflicts of interest. On item 21A, it affects my commitment in a private capacity to the interest of an associate in my real estate office who represents the owner of the property at issue. Therefore, a reasonable person in my position would be materially affected by this relationship, and because this is a disqualifying conflict of interest, I will be abstaining from voting on this matter.
Any other disclosures? Anything changed from the first reading?
No changes, Mr. Mayor.
Public comment, anybody? Board comment?
Ordinance number?
2015-3.
Go.
Motion. I move to adopt Bill number 104 on second reading, ordinance number 2015-3, an ordinance to change the zoning of property located at 1001 Mountain Street and 608 and 610 West Washington Street, APN 001-201-15-16-26 and -27, from public community to multifamily apartment based on the findings contained in the staff report.
Motion by Supervisor Abbott, second by Supervisor Shirk on the motion. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. 4 ayes, 1 abstention. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Board, let's be in recess until around 10:30, and we'll take up the support grants. Okay. Okay, let's see if we can find a seat, and we'll get going for the next agenda item. Okay, we're going to take up, which one was that one?
21B.
21B. This is prioritize the Community Support Services Grant funding for youth. And I think we're going to be doing CDBG as well. Right after that, 21 Charlie. So I know there's some disclosures. Who wants to start on disclosures before we take this up? Supervisor Abad.
I'll start. Mr. Mayor, NRS 281A.420 requires me to voluntarily disclose a conflict of interest or what may possibly be an appearance of impropriety. The matter before this body affects my commitment in a private capacity to the interests of another person. My husband serves as a board member of RSVP, and I serve with Joyce Buckingham on Ron Wood on the Harvest Hub Board. RSVP and Ron Wood are applicants for funding from the CDBG and CSSG programs, and I conclude that the independence of judgment of a reasonable person in my situation would not be materially affected by this relationship, and because this is not a clear case of a disqualifying conflict of interest, I'm going to be voting in this matter.
And I would make the same disclosure for Boys and Girls Club. Although I'm not on the board, I do work with them on their annual fundraiser, and then also I am the RTC chair, who also is an applicant today.
Go.
Okay, the same disclosure for me, but my potential conflict is fish, but it's not a disqualifying conflict of interest, so I'll be voting on the matter.
Anybody else?
Order you up.
I have no disclosure. I have no conflict of interest today or tomorrow or yesterday.
I have a couple to disclose. I'm on the Capital City Circles Initiative Board of Directors. My wife is on the Board of Directors for the Mile High Jazz Band. I believe I'm a member of a number of these organizations, including the Carson City Symphony Association. I'm also a member of the Carson City Regional Transportation Commission. And I think that's it, but the legal statement that Supervisor Abad read at the beginning applies to me. Okay? All right. Everybody okay with all those disclosures? It's a small community. That's what we call citizen government. So, okay. All right. Janice, who's going to do it? You or Lee to start us off? Janice.
Okay, so this is for possible action to prioritize a Community Support Services Grant, CSSG, funding for youth programs for fiscal year 2015 to 16. So the amount of CSSG funding available is approximately $257,200. The funding source is the city's general fund. The CSSG is separated into two categories. There's the youth, and then there's the general programs. General programs typically receive $185,000. Youth programs typically receive $72,200. The youth programs are handled by Partnership Carson City. So before I bring up Kathy Bartos, I just wanted to let the board know that we have received feedback from our reviewers of the applications, and they feel that our application can be improved. So we would like to sit down with the reviewers and staff at a later date and see what we can do, go over the grant, and see what we can do to make the process better, the application better. So we've discussed that. So I would just like to bring up Kathy Bartos, and she's going to discuss how they determine the funding for the youth CSSG programs.
Good morning, Ms. Bartos. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you. As you can see from the chart, our part was fairly simple. We only received requests for a few $1,000s more than what we had to allocate out. And once we made the necessary changes that were requested by our review panel, we came out looking pretty good. So I do have representatives from most of the organizations here. I've noticed them in the room. But as you can see, the advocates requested about what? $40 less than what they ended up receiving. So they got the $5,900. Boys and Girls Club Teen Center, again, they got close to what they asked for, as did Carson City Symphony and as well Ronwood Family Resource Center. The only one who received less was the Big Brothers Big Sisters, and the reason we did that was twofold. One, they're a new entity in our community. They're based in Reno. We would like to see a little more Carson City participation on their board. They have one member on their board from Carson City. But we do have a need for a mentoring program in our community. They are well thought of up in the Washoe County area and, of course, nationally. So we wanted to give them a shot at this. The reason they were given the $10,000 instead of the $20,000 is because in their application they indicated that they were serving 25 mentors with 25 youth already in the Carson City area. And in looking at that further, the number was actually 12. So we decided to start them off at $10,000. And what we'll be doing is giving them $5,000 initially, and then after 6 months into the grant, we'll give them the second $5,000 so that we can see really how well this is working with our population here in the community. The only other thing I'd like to add is for the admin. We put in $4,700. That does not really go to admin. What that will be doing is we'll cover part of our costs that are associated with overseeing these grants. Then probably the balance of that will go into our educational enrichment fund, which is open to all nonprofits in the community to access if they have a financial need for a child that needs to participate in a enrichment activity like their lab fee for a chemistry class at the high school or shoes for soccer. And those are all funneled to us through nonprofit gatekeepers. So at this point, I'll entertain any questions you have on the decisions that were made by our review team.
Brad.
My comment's not on the review, but we had a conversation over this last year about the designation of the purpose of the funds for these grants. And in last year's resolution, it's a generic operations for every grant.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a nonprofit who came to us in good faith to let us know that they were going to repurpose those funds. And when we go back and look at this, if we allowed the purpose to be strictly operations, they really didn't need to come back to us to do that. So I think that going forward over this next year, as Janice said, along with looking at the application and maybe revamping that, we also need to come up with a policy on the designation of the funds and possible documentation and accountability for those funds. So I would just like to include that in the conversations over the next year so that we can try to address this for next year's grant cycle. We can also have a conversation, if anybody here at the board would like to, about whether we want to do anything about the designation for this year.
Okay.
Any other comments on the board? Public comments, anybody? Want to talk?
I have a question. Will the general organizations take up?
Come on up.
This is just a question. This is just youth organizations?
Youth
The
right
general
now.
would be a separate
Right.
item? Okay, thank you. Pardon me?
Just identify yourself for the record.
Teresa Bozanik.
I'm sorry, Teresa, go ahead. All right. This is just for the ones that are showing up there, and we'll do the rest later. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Motion's in order, I guess. I think so.
I move to approve the Community Support Services grant funding for youth programs for fiscal year 2015-2016, subject to approval of the 2015-2016 budget.
Second.
Motion by Supervisor Bonkowski, second by Supervisor Abad on the motion. Discussion. Discussions are.
Actually, I'd like to ensure that it's going to be for the applications as stated, that they don't get the opportunity to change the funding methodology that they get for the application they submitted as discussed earlier.
Per the budget worksheet submitted with the application.
Yes, I'd like that as an amendment to the motion.
I'm agreeable to amending my motion to include that.
And I will second that amendment.
Why don't we, for clarity, why don't we remake the motion in the second so that we know to have to do it?
Okay, I withdraw my original motion, and I will remake the motion to be, I move to approve the Community Support Services grant funding for youth programs for the fiscal year 2015-2016 fiscal year, with one change, that the designation of the funding shall be tied to the budget worksheets submitted as part of the applications from the grantees, subject to approval of the fiscal year 2015-2016 budget.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Supervisor Bonkowski, a couple seconds. On the motion, further discussion? Not all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried unanimous. Thank you. Thank you for the good work, Partnership Carson City, for taking the laboring oar. Okay. All right. Are we ready to take up the next one? This will go pretty quick, just like that one, right?
Yeah, we'll see. So this one is for possible action to allocate the Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, and Community Support Services Grant, CSSG funding for fiscal year 2015-16, and to open a 30-day public comment period from May 5th to April 3rd, 2015 for review of the Carson City Draft CDBG 2015-16 Annual Action Plan to implement the Department of Housing and Urban Development HUD CDBG program. So we actually know our allocation this year ahead of time. Normally we don't know at this point, but we are going to be getting $349,619, which is less than last year.
For CDBG only.
That's for CDBG. In fact, that's the lowest we've received since we started getting funded in 2004. It's a reduction of $13,343 from 2014. So how it breaks out is there will be $52,442 for public services. We have a 15% maximum on that category. And there will be $227,254 for public facilities and improvement.
We're adding 10.
And we are adding $10,000 from our current fiscal year's planning and admin. So that will move up to $237,254. And our admin money will be $69,923. The CSSG funding available for Carson City is approximately $185,000. A community-based application review work group reviewed all of the applications and conducted a public meeting where they interviewed all of the applicants on February 4th, and then they ranked the applications as recommended by for recommendation by the Board of Supervisors.
One clarification
Sure.
For the record, the planning and improvement amount should be $59,923.
59. Actually, the 10,000 that we're going to be putting into the public facilities is from this year. So we have additional funds from this year, which is 2014. So this 69 is for 2015.
So it won't change?
So that won't change, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So what I'd like to do, excuse me?
Where's the 10,000 going?
The 10,000 that we would like to add is going to go for public facilities and improvements because that doesn't have a cap. Public services has the cap, so we can't add it to that category. So what I'd like to do is bring up our chair for our application review work group, Chris Wickstead, and have him go over how they decided on these recommendations. So, Chris.
Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. Chris Wickstead for the record, chairperson for the CDBG and CSSG work group and resident of Carson City. So the application work group has the inspiring but challenging task of allocating funds to many of the most impactful organizations in Carson City. To do this, what we do is we look through all the applications in advance before the meeting, and then we take a day, meet with the applicants, learn more about their programs, and then ask any questions we may have, any clarifications that we need. As you're aware, requests exceed the available funding. So one of the most difficult objectives for us is to diversify the grants to make sure that the wide-ranging impacts are seen throughout the community while staying within budget. So the primary goals of the work group that I would like to share are really focusing on the low to moderate income impacts within the community, ensuring the focus of the funding impacts Carson City directly, and avoiding any overlapping funding for duplicate services. There are some areas where we can see some of that overlap, so we've made some adjustments accordingly. And I'd just like to thank the entire work group, Susan, Craig, Ale, Angie, Claudia, Ronnie, Janice, and Lee for all their hard work and effort on the Mission Critical Initiative for Carson City. So.
Okay. So this is, what we're seeing up here in yellow is the recommendation of the work group. Okay. All right. We'll now open it up for public comment. Unless there's board comment, but let's go board comment first and see where we go.
Okay.
Board.
I just have a question, and Joyce, I don't mean to single you out, but I need to ask you a question. In terms of recording donated produce and things of that nature.
Yes.
Okay, I noticed on the application that it's only 6 months reflected instead of a year, and because the Greenhouse Project donates.
Right.
That's not a true reflection of what an entire year's gift is. So I'm just wondering why the 6 months as opposed to a full year.
Sure. Joyce Buckingham, Ronwood Family Resource Center. What we did was on the annual reporting form, it is reporting for the current fiscal year. So the only reason that it has the first 6 months is because those were the numbers we had available at that particular time. Yes. And you can see we took in over 150,000 pounds of food, so that only is a snapshot of the 6 months for the funding period. All right? Thank you.
Go.
So, for me, this is probably just general comment, but since I heard that Janice indicated that we'll be looking at how we're going to do this in the future, because my concern on this item is we continue to give money to the same organizations year after year after year, and so when you're putting the work together for the future year, can we include some criteria-based information in the applications? I think I'm getting constituent questions that deal with why are we continuing to fund these? What methods do the organizations do to reduce their need to ask for government funding? How do we know this is the best use of the dollars? So if you could work with your group to include those types of questions, because I think you're all great organizations that provide service to our community, but it's pretty difficult for me to sit here without more information to be able to make good decisions for the residents of Carson City. So if that can please be included, I'd appreciate that.
I have a question maybe for Chris. On the application from Carson City School District, and if you can't answer this, I'll have Mr. Stokes come up.
Sure.
The request was for $83,598, and then that was amended to a lower amount of $66,098. But the application implies that this is an all-or-nothing request, that if they don't get all of the funds required to build out the medical facility, that they won't be able to build it out. So was that question asked in your committee?
Yes, one of the questions we ask all of the applicants is, we are given the challenge of staying within budget and funding a wide variety of valuable programs or organizations. And when that question was asked with this one, it's mostly, my recollection is that it was a construction effort to get the building up to speed for this initiative. So if you did half of it, it's not really you can't do half a room, right, for improving this sort of thing. And I'm sure Mr. Stokes and his group could speak to it further, but my recollection would be is that the struggle wouldn't have been able to be a partial project.
Right, but the recommendation from the committee is to fund about half. So that's why I'm asking the question is, if we took the committee's recommendation and we funded half of the requested amount, which is now about 2/3 of the recommended or requested amount, can they do anything with that money? Or are they just going to have to sit on it until they can fundraise the balance of the money to build out the facility?
Mm-hmm. And for the organization's goals, I would have to defer to them. But I think our view from the application work group was that we would like to see a little bit more of the school's vested interest in this effort. And the reason for that is because it is a partnership with the Nevada Health Centers. And so when the review work group discussed that, there's going to be some benefit back and forth with the school. It's a valuable program. It'll get low to moderate income students able to get health care where it would have been much more challenging for them not to. But on the same token, it's shared with the school district. Yep.
Is the intent to have all of the applicants come up and give a brief presentation? Or are they only going to respond to questions that we ask?
I think that's up to you guys. Yeah, we think that would be up to you, but since we've already interviewed everybody, I think if you have a question for a specific organization, you should call them.
Then I would like to call up a representative of the Carson City School District to see if I can get a clarification. Good morning, Mr. Stokes.
Good morning.
Did you understand my question?
I did, thank you. Supervisor Bonkowski, Mr. Mayor, members of the board, staff, Richard Stokes, for the record, Superintendent of Carson City School District. When the original award was made known, we did go back to our own records. We sharpened the pencil a little bit more. We looked at ways that we could come up with a portion of what we had asked for to show in good faith that we are committed to this project. We recognize that there's a significant need, especially in our schools, to serve children who are underserved by the regular system. And some of you may have seen that we have just recently gotten into the nonprofit business with our foundation. They have stepped forward with a pledge. And so as a result, we thought we would seek an opportunity here for letting you folks know that we are committed to this project. Our partners, Nevada Health Centers, are putting forward about $112,000 annually toward this effort. And we would like to be able to open the Student Health Care Center in time for the coming school year. And so hopefully we could provide enough information to you today, either in terms of how this applies to our strategic plan, or how we would approach the construction, or how we see the need as an expectation for us in the coming school year for our students. So with our new proposal, we'd be seeking from the grant $66,098 to make the necessary renovations to our building for this project to proceed.
So the committee recommendation is to fund $41,406, if I can see that correctly. And if we accepted the committee's recommendation and the request is for $66,098, is there a party that can fund the difference, the $25,000 difference, or would you have to just bank the money until you can fundraise the additional $25,000?
We would make every effort to meet the shortfall so that we could begin construction once the money was available to us and begin our project as quickly as we could. Thank you.
Jim.
Lee, are you awarding anything to the home improvement for seniors? Nothing, right? Okay.
Yeah, looking at the spreadsheet there, we had three applicants. So the application review work group did not recommend funding for home improvement for seniors. Sorry, I was just going to jump in. So I would, to maybe help this and get this discussion, there are two distinct pools of money and also two categories. So one category is the public improvements projects that is for CDBG funding only, and it's a certain portion of the CDBG funding. That's the 227. Actually, we'll change that on here to $237,000 that are available for allocation. And perhaps to facilitate the meeting, maybe we deal with that smaller portion first instead of going back and forth between the two pools of money. Might want to have discussions on one and then the other, because we're going to be flipping back and forth on this screen. So that's just a suggestion.
All right. Go, follow up.
And then I have a question for our RSVP, if they're here. Good morning.
Good morning. For the record, I'm Susan Haas, Executive Director of RSVP. Good morning, Supervisors and Mr. Mayor.
Morning, Susan. I'm just curious, do you receive any funding from any other rural counties other than Carson City, and if so, dollar amount wise total?
Yes, we do. Last year, we received $106,000 from various counties around the state, because we serve almost all of the rural counties in one capacity or another.
Thank you.
Susan, I do have a question too. Can you just elaborate on the how your numbers have grown or decreased over this past year that you're serving?
Yes, we have served, this year we have served 2,200 seniors. And we have a wait list now of 10 families that are waiting for respite care. And we're consistently have a wait list for those that want transportation. And most of the time they would like to have transportation 5 days a week. And of course, we can't provide that. So we may be able to provide 1 day a week. And then we'll put them on the wait list and try to refer them to other agencies who may be able to supplement. All in all, we help thousands of people in Carson City, whether it be through, we have 500 volunteers, registered volunteers, who provided, let me see I'm trying to remember exact number of hours we had last year in Carson City. Carol, do you have that handy? I think I have it. 36,000 hours of service in Carson City alone. So if you look at the value of those services, they range anywhere from $20 per hour to, if it's a pro bono legal program, that can be $300 per hour. But all in all, we look at that as about $720,000 in value to the community in Carson City alone.
And in order to support the services needed, what are the, just for the record, the additional events that you've added to what you already do to try and meet that need?
Well, we're looking at expanding some of the special events that we're providing in the community. And we did add a new event, the Winter Wine, Spirits, and All That Jazz event at the Brewery Arts Center. And then this month, on the 25th, Kat Simmons is providing a comedy show. We're calling it Comic Relief. So we encourage everybody to attend that too. And looking at different ways, I understand that it's difficult for us to come and ask every time for more and more money. And believe me, we look at every resource we possibly can. But let me just say that the poor will be with us always. Seniors are living longer, but not necessarily healthier lives. And their needs are growing, and we're there to help to meet those needs. Thank you.
Did you go?
I don't have a question for Susan. It's more if we're going to talk about CDBG. So we have $10,000 additional dollars that the work group was not aware of to be able to distribute either to the school district or to our public works for sidewalks. So that's a decision point that the work group did not have, so we'll need to discuss where we're going to put the $10,000. Am I correct? Okay, so then the discussion for us is, so on the sidewalk money, we're able to leverage that against other funding sources to create more dollars for the community. Is that correct?
That's correct. Patrick Pittenger can probably go into that, but it's the FTA funds.
Patrick Pittenger for the record. I don't need the crutch to get from here to there. Regarding the sidewalk project, the proposed project is similar to our previous ones. We picked a high need area. This is actually, the primary focus is going to be on Monte Rosa Drive. It's actually near Empire Elementary School. That school has a lot of low-income residents. The children walk more at that school than they walk at other schools. They don't receive busing. And there are still some extremely deteriorated sidewalks that are just right adjacent to the school. We do have some transit money available now. It's relatively limited at the moment because we've dedicated so much to the Fleet building It's about $750,000 that we've dedicated to the expansion of the fleet building. But the only reason we haven't been able to dedicate more at this time is that we've only gotten a partial year of federal funding from the Federal Transit Administration. Usually we receive about $950,000 of a primary funding source, and another $100,000 that's only meant for capital projects like this, like we just used on Fifth Street. But unfortunately, because of the federal budget situation, we've only received a little less than 2/3 of that. So we've had to make sure that we've taken care of the transit operating needs. But we expect that as soon as the federal government does their business, hundreds of thousands of dollars will be made available to us that we will be able to leverage. So it's just a little different this year because of the federal situation that we're waiting to be resolved.
Okay, while we're on discussion, it's a good idea. Let's take up the CDBG stuff funds first, and then board will talk about that at the board level. And any members of the public want to bring up anything on the proposal? Board? Looks like, I think Supervisor Bagwell probably nailed that on the head that said, we've got one decision point as to what to do with the additional $10,000, and I don't know how we found that, but that's good to find. So, Supervisor Shirk, you want to start?
No, I just have a question for Lee, if you don't mind. Lee, out of the public service projects, there's a total of 18, taking out duplications, there's a total of 18 in there. How does the city reach out to these entities to get their response of funding they may need? I mean, are we getting more applicants, or is this it? Is this the number of applicants that applied, or is it 18 total for the whole community that came forward seeking funding?
Yes, and we have a list of community services organizations that we've built up over the year, so that notice goes out of these applications beforehand. So we have not thrown any applications out this year for lack of information or any other reason. So these represent all the applications that came in for these two grants.
Thank you.
By the way, how'd the additional 10,000 how was that found?
I'll talk a little bit. So you have in your packet, you have a memo that's late information. So as you see in the board action report form, there's 20% of the CDBG funds can be set aside each year for administration of the CDBG program, and that does pay for our staff time working on the CDBG program. Also pays for other, administrative costs, any training supplies, program planning documents, and other costs. It can also, it's also in the past paid to help for studies, planning studies related to low, moderate income and homelessness. So it's been used for that. But we have not generally used the full allocation every year. So this is just a cost savings carryover from prior years, and what we've calculated is not being committed for the remainder of this year. In fact, a little bit more than that. We still likely to leave a little buffer in there in case things come up. But so our recommendation is to go ahead and put that into the public facilities for next year so that it gets expended.
Brad.
So just to clarify, the $10,000 is coming from an additional $15,000 of undesignated funds from 2014-15. So you would retain the $69,923 for 15-16, and you would use the rollover, what would be rollover funds, to add to public facilities for next fiscal year.
So in approximately a month, we'll come back with the final CDBG action plan that has your recommendations today. So actually, the planning allocation will be reduced by $10,000 for next year's action plan. So we'll continue using last year's, and we have enough. It's covered. So the action plan is actually going to have. It's going to equal the total that CDBG gives us for this year. We're still using some carryover from last year's, or not last year's. we're still using some carryover from this year's funding to get us into next year, and then we'll be okay.
And then you would address any undesignated funds from fiscal year 15-16 at the end of next year's cycle.
Correct.
And that would come out of the 69,923.
Right.
So, to be clear, the additional $10,000 can only be applied to the public improvement portion, not the public services portion. That's
Correct.
the first question.
It can continue to be used for administration side, which we probably just won't use that much, because public services is limited in any given year to a maximum of 15% of the total CDBG allocation. We have that number, so that number is fixed at that $52,442 from CDBG for a public service project. Yeah.
And then my second question is on the senior home improvement, that since they don't have their nonprofit status, we can't really provide money to someone that doesn't have a completed application with all the necessary requirements, correct?
Well, we could not actually give them the money, and that was part of the discussion that the application review work group had, and they're working to get that. And if they get it, and if they get it in time, we could then allocate the money, but that's correct. We couldn't give them the money without that. No, I'm not sure. Is that the case? Do they have to be nonprofit to get CDBG in the regulations?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think they have to be nonprofit to receive CDBG funds.
Yeah, I think what was being discussed about that project is that they're just starting out, we don't know their track record yet, and they're not quite there yet to really start. I mean, they could be there by July 1, but, so I think that's what the work group discussed about, now why they didn't want to fund them.
Yeah, exactly, and just the startup nature of it, and the fact it seems like a great program because there is a need in the community with the low income at the senior level of trying to stay in their homes and that sort of thing, as well as trying to get help that doesn't bail out on them and do a half construction project and then leave. So that's what they're trying to shore up with this group, and our discussion was just around them getting started and getting everything in place. So
Chris, where would you put the extra 10,000 if you could speak for your committee?
Well, if it were for us, I think probably what I would do is suggest that we put half toward the sidewalks and half toward the school district. One other choice, though, would be that we could get closer to the school district need with the $10,000. So that could be kind of a meeting of the minds or halfway point there. Like I said, I think our discussion would have centered more around the fact that we leverage so much funds for the sidewalks, and there's tremendous need in the community for continuing the sidewalk efforts, whether it be improving or adding sidewalks. It's always a topic of discussion at redevelopment and many other of the committees. So it's hard not to want to really push that forward. But the school district need, I think, is there, and I think it would be beneficial to do whatever we can. So.
Not easy to be Solomon all the time, is it?
It's difficult with this one, yeah.
Hang on, Supervisor Bagwell may have a question or comment. Sure.
Well, I guess for me, I was looking at the $10,000 and what the work group did, and why wouldn't we just take the $10,000 and do the same exact ratio that the work group did? So if they'd have had the $10,000, apply it in the same ratio that they did the existing dollars that they knew about. So it looked like an 80-20 split to me. So give another $8,000 to the sidewalks and $2,000 more to the school district, because you would have potentially done it that way based on that ratio that you did right there to be consistent.
I think I'm okay. Personally, I think the splitting the baby 5 and 5 makes sense. I mean, because I think that I understand for me, I understand the necessity of leveraging funds for the sidewalks. I do, but I also think that an additional $5,000 to the school, given the program they're on, is going to probably go to extremely good use to get that project off the ground and get done. So that's where I'd come from. But we'll have a vote on this in a minute. We'll just take a vote on CDBG then we'll see where we go. So that's my thought, and I don't know if anybody else has got any discussions on it. Go.
And this would be a Patrick. I hate to make you get up again.
Patrick Pinger, it's not as bad as they told me it was going to
Yeah,
be.
Supervisor Shirk said, did you fall on one of our sidewalks?
No, absolutely not.
All right.
After all those years of having to get down the ski hill by myself, I finally got a ride down. Not that I wanted to help.
Ooh, rough way to go. So Patrick, that $10,000, what does that mean in terms of leveraging for you? How much more does that bring? Just so we can just make an adequate decision.
The way it probably will not have an impact on how much will be leveraged. It is such a wonderful thing that the CDBG can do is that the federal money needs to be, it can at most be 80-20, 80% transit and 20% something else. This is the something else that is the 20%. So, you know, technically if you had $200,000 of this money, you could leverage up to $800,000 of transit money. We don't have that much money. So if I'm able to locate, you know, $200,000, that's not going to be, that match isn't going to be affected. We're already going to be effectively matching the money that's available to us. So it doesn't actually change that. Okay.
All right, other public comment? Board, let's see where we go on the CDBG. Anybody want to try a motion, see what we do? Nobody wants to do that? All right.
And Mayor, this would, to be clear with this motion, it'd be for the CDBG Public Improvement Project.
Public improvement only, right. And just to see where we are on, so we can, then we'll focus on the other ones.
Okay, so is staff puts 5,000 to each of those in the column, so we can see how much motion we'd have to make? Since he can only can't leverage anymore if we gave you more, so 5,000 for each of the two would be fine. Since there's
Okay,
no
well, I
more
think
money to leverage.
that's where we are. I don't yet,
Right.
yeah.
There's no more money we get. So.
All right, well, let's see if we could, let's try this. Let's see if we can try a motion on the CDBG Public Facilities one for just taking the recommendation of the work group and adding $5,000 to the sidewalk public works and $5,000 to the school application. That motion work? Will somebody second that? Motion by me, I guess, and seconded by a couple on the motion. Discussion? Okay, let's, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Nay.
Nay, okay. We got 4 ayes, 4 ayes, and 1 nay. Okay, so we're done with CDBG part of it. Let's take up the others now. Huh? Sometimes you got to get what you
Mr. Mayor, I
get.
just want to point out, we still have one more CDBG, and that's for public services.
I didn't hear that.
We still have.
We need one more motion to deal with the $52,442, and I'll make that motion.
Go ahead, let's,
But-
public comment. Anybody want to publicly comment on this before we could take a motion back here? Anybody? What we have in front of us, by the way, is, you know, what the work group said, so.
And moving on to the public service, so to explain this a little bit, again, now there's a category of, this is in the public services category is the next step, and now there's the 2 pools of money that that is a little bit fungible within these. In the past, in the last couple years, we've been able, and actually since one of the reasons we combine these applications coming to us together is that there was some duplication of submitting for CDBG and CSSG, and we were giving a little bit to different CDBG, a little bit of CDBG to different groups and a little bit of CSSG to the same groups. Doing this together allows us to kind of lump it together because for a federal program management standpoint, it's easier and better for us to manage one applicant under CDBG than to kind of split it up. So that's kind of how the recommendations from the application review work group, where it's possible, we're using all of the all of the CDBG public services allocation for one applicant, so then we only have to manage one federal grant under that program, and then recommend the other funding through the CSSG program. So that's the purpose for that. Again, you can, you have the ability to kind of move those numbers around a little bit with that 52,000 being the cap on the CDBG side.
Okay. Yes, sir. Morning.
Hello, I'm Mike Davis from the ESL in-home program in Northern Nevada. As you can see, we requested $35,000, and based on the recommendation, it's been recommended that we receive $0 for funding in this program. I'm just trying to, based on our initial discussion with some of the members of the staff, it sounds like the recommendation is that maybe our program is duplicative of some other programs that are currently receiving some funding, and I'm just trying to get some better clarification so that I can truly understand why we're getting a big zero instead of some partial funding instead of a zero. Am I allowed to ask for that?
I think that's what I kind of heard, but Chris, you want to address that?
Yes.
Come on up.
And for the record, Chris Wickstead. The duplication that we saw with the two programs was United Latino Community and ESL and Home. And so the difficulty there was United Latino Community actually does provide some ESL services to the community of Carson City. And with ESL and Home, some of the concerns of the work group was that the significant contingent of their board was from Reno. There are 2 members from Carson, it appears, according to their application, so we do have that. But based on the recommendations and the discussion, we came up with this is where we landed. So.
Okay. Any questions, Chris? All right. I think I got it. Okay. All right.
So originally it was stated that it was, so it sounds like it's slightly duplicative, and it sounds like also maybe they don't feel like our program is seated and the money that's going to go to our program will benefit Carson City students and tutors, or Carson City students, Carson City citizens. However, we feel that it is not duplicative, our services, that we provide a different type of service than the United Latino Community, and for that reason, we would like a share of some of those funds so that we can use it to benefit our students. It's not duplicative in our findings for, the main reason is that we are the ESL in-home program of Northern Nevada. We also service we also service members of the community that are not Spanish speaking. We serve other members of the community that are non-native English speakers but are not Spanish-speaking members. So we serve to the non-native speaking, and we also serve members of the community who can't necessarily get up and go into the United Latino community to receive those services. And so for that reason, what we're requesting is a partial share of those funds that were granted to the United Latino community to help fund those levels. According to our numbers, we have a very similar amount of students as the United Latino community, and so therefore we were hoping for a similar share in those services. So what I'm recommending, based on their funding of $20,000, is I'm recommending somewhere in the range of $5,000 to $10,000 for our program as well, because upon not giving us any of those funds, none of those students in our program those services will be diminished over time as our funds run out, and those students will go underserved and will not be able to be served by ULC.
Okay. Was that argument made to the work group?
As far as I know, that argument, there was no discussion with the work group on this. I'm uneducated on what discussion was actually had with the work group.
Okay.
And
Were you
the
there?
process of that.
I didn't, just for clarification, were you at the work group meeting?
I was not.
Okay, all right, that's okay. Any other, thank you.
Thank you.
These are always hard decisions, let me tell you. I mean, these and board appointments are, we could be nice to be able to do away with these. We're thinking we should all be conflicted out, but Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Teresa Bazanik. I am a Carson City resident. I am a board member of ESL at home, in-home, and I am also a tutor in the program. To put a human face on this, we've brought some of our students and our tutors who are in Carson City. Yes, we're the program of Northern Nevada, but we are heavily in Carson City. And if I could just ask them to stand to be recognized. They work very hard in this program, as I'm sure every participant in every volunteer program works, but we do have Carson City representation on our board. You said we only have 2 Carson City board members, but since we only have 4 to begin with, that's 50%. And we are a Northern Nevada organization. The money that is granted by the city of Carson City, if it was restricted, it would certainly be used for whatever it was restricted for. If it's to be used, it's very difficult for an organization that has 1 clerical support staff to isolate what money is spent in Carson City versus the overall program. When we do a mailing, certainly we sort the mailing, but it could be done if it had to be. If you want this money to only be spent in Carson City, we'd have to abide by that. This program has been in existence since 2004. The ULC program was started last October when the person who was directing our program, or program director for us, on a joint venture grant with United Latino, and I don't know all the details of the grant, but anyway, she was working for both organizations. She resigned from ESL and went to United Latino full-time. That was the inception of their program. At that time, many of the students and tutors that were ESL students and tutors became ULC tutors. And so it's kind of an outgrowth of our program instead of a duplication. As Mike said, we feel like the money should at least be allocated equitably between both organizations. We have the history, we have the record, and our organization, as Mike said, is in home, and I don't believe theirs is. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Okay.
For the record, my name is Ron Roberts, and I'm a tutor for the ESL program here for Northern Nevada. I'm primarily a citizenship teacher, and about 3 times a year I have a class for citizenship. We meet at the city library every Saturday, and our class lasts for 12 weeks. We teach everything that the student needs to know for citizenship, in order to pass the exam, also to go through the interview process. We help also to fill out their applications for citizenship, which is about 20 pages. I've been doing this for about 8 years. We've served an awful lot of people, and a lot of our students have received their citizenship because of it. We have a very good success rate. We teach history, geography, civics, and American symbols, and everyone that goes through the 12 weeks are very well prepared for citizenship, and we've had a very good success rate. My students have been primarily from the Hispanic community, but we also have people from like Canada and the Czech Republic, and everybody is welcome to take this program. We don't charge any money for it, and for the students, we help them learn everything they need to know to pass their exam. And if there's any questions?
Well, I just have, help me understand the dynamic of what's going on here. Teresa just said that the major, as I heard it anyway, the major distinction between what the program, your program does, and what United Latino is, she does, the ESL program does it in-home, but now I'm understanding that it is actually done in a classroom or classroom environment at the library?
Well, we have 2 parts. Okay. Most of our students for the ESL program, we have our tutors go to the student's house, and they tutor them at their house at a time at which is mutually agreeable. For myself, for the citizenship, because I have more than just one student, most of our, for the ELS program, it's like on a one-to-one basis. But because we have so many people that want to become citizens, we have to have a larger venue. And so at least for myself, we have to have a place where we like a classroom. But primarily, we do it on a one-to-one program. Program. We also do GED help for passing the GED, and I also do that for math. So yes, we do. Most of it is one-to-one in the student's home, but for myself, when we're doing citizenship, we have to have a larger area because we serve more people.
Okay, all right. Teresa, come on up. Then we'll go.
Could I address what I said? I also teach ESL in Empire Elementary School because some of my students are mothers who drop off their children and then they're there, so they come to class. Our program is as flexible as any student needs it to be, though. We'll go into a home, we'll have them into a public place. It's totally, and the scheduling is totally at the student's discretion. So what our program does is match the tutor to a situation that suits the student's needs. And the tutor's needs. I mean, in my case, my background was more in group training, so I was comfortable doing as large of a group as I need to do, whereas some of our tutors are better at one-on-one. So we match the tutor to the student in all of our classes. Perhaps citizenship is an exception because of the amount of study required. But we do our GED prep in any situation people want it, and it's totally flexible.
Thank you, Teresa. Okay.
Teresa, could I ask you a question? How many do you serve? How many approximately?
Okay, our current students are 142, but that's flexible. Last year we had as many as 500. Our student population is often very transient. So we may have, like within Empire Elementary, I have had times when I've had 10 people in a class. Those people after a couple of months may get jobs, and that's wonderful for us if they get a job because that means their English is doing them good. So it's a transient kind of it's hard to keep track of our success based on numbers alone because, again, of the transients. But currently we have 142 students in Carson City with a waiting list of 296. So.
Okay.
And part of our expense, of course, and part of our waiting list and all of those issues involves the purchase of books and materials because our students don't pay anything for participating in the program. We provide all materials to them, so part of the waiting list is that need.
I'm going to get to the young lady over here in the white.
I have a question.
Yeah, and then Jim's got a question. Come on.
Right, yeah.
I know we
Sorry.
got.
Just to follow up, the number you gave, but on page 4, if I'm reading this correctly, it says the project will allow us to continue serving our 260 students in Carson City on page 4.
This is our director, Florence Phillips, who is more in tune with what was submitted to, because I did not submit that
Hi,
to them.
Florence.
Hello,
To the young lady
Mayor
in the white. We'll
Crowell.
get to you, don't worry.
Mayor, I want to personally say hello to you. I don't
Hello.
know if you remember, you are our keynote speaker at our award ceremony at the governor's mansion.
Now I have another conflict.
And so you saw how many students and tutors were there to accept certificates. Those figures, Jim, were put in before ULC absconded our students and tutors. I'm sorry for my directness on this. But today we have the numbers that Terry Buzanek had given you. Okay, so those numbers there were put in before we realized that some of our students and tutors were taken away when ULC started. I need to tell you that when this program started in 2004, it was strictly an in-home because I eliminated all the obstacles of the immigrants here who wanted to speak English but could not. No transportation, disabilities, no funds for childcare, no tuition money. Ours is strictly a no-cost to student, and we have all levels, those that don't speak English, some that do, some are more advanced. We have university students. We're in partnership with Western Nevada College. They'll send us students who need one-on-one, and we'll send them the students that are advancing and can do well in a class. We have all their dropouts because our groups are only 3 to 4. And the reason I did that is we had so many waiting and not enough tutors that I stopped the one-on-one, which of course is still going on, and we have small groups of 3 to 4. We teach ESL on all levels. We teach GED. There are many, as you know, young women who had to stop the 9th and 10th grade to have babies. They are back now to get a GED so they could find jobs. They are our students. We teach workplace communication. And I don't know if my wonderful citizenship tutor told you, but because of his classes, we have 172 in Carson of our students that are now U.S. citizens. And we have 51 now studying.
Hang on, we got one question.
Florence, so can you tell me where, you just said that you don't charge for any of your services.
Right.
Where do you actually get your funding? I'm sorry, the applications don't have all the pieces in the public record, so where do you actually get your funding?
Well, because of this board, for the last 2 years, we got funding from you.
Where else do you
We
get
also get funding, individuals, some of the student tutors who develop.
So it's just donations?
Just donations. There's no state, federal, or anything coming in. It's just individual donations. Some donors have given to us from the very beginning. They supply us $1,000 every year. The service clubs where I went to give presentations to create this program before the economy got bad, they supported us, and every money that we got was to purchase the books to start new students. And we have tutors waiting right now to start their one-on-one or group. They have the choice, but I don't have the funds to purchase the books. We would love to take some of the people from our wait list and get them started. We have a woman here. I'd like to introduce her, Jasmine. Jasmine, would you please come up? This is a woman who started as a dishwasher to learn English. Please tell them what you knew and what you know now.
Hi, my name is Jasmine. I started working 8 years ago at the restaurant Grandma Harris, and I don't speak any English. And always when somebody told me something, somebody else had to help me to translation what they said. So, but now, John, he find there, Miss Florence, and she going to the restaurant because we are 5 girls over there, and she going to teach the girls over there for no charge. And then after that, I was dishwasher, then I am pre-cook, and then I am cook. And now I am waitress because my English is much better and better practice, and the teacher next to me always show me something new words and everything. So now I am dishwasher, and I can help John to, when he had to go vacation or something, he can trust when I had to do one deposit for him, I had to take him from the restaurant, just in case if somebody's sick or when he need help. And the program, they help a lot. Thank you.
Thanks, Jasmine, and congratulations to you. Hang on a minute, Florence, hang on. I think we've got a pretty good idea. Come on up, and then we'll...
Hello, I'm Yaraset Anaya with the United Latino Community. I need to speak up. One, because we are not asking for funding to fund our ESL program. That's not what the application that we completed for was. We are asking to fund the client advocate program, okay? So just to clear, we ended up with ESL in our lap. ESL is not a program that we were going to offer because we believe there's agencies, great agencies out there offering it. There's no point in reinventing the wheel. It's already there. We had a partnership with ESL in-home where they were going to provide the classes in our office, and we were going to provide them with an office and the supplies and the copy machine. The staff that they provided had an office, everything she needed to complete the job. My understanding was that they had an agreement. ESL and their staff had an agreement. She was going to get paid for the services. The funding that she received from you guys last year was to pay for services. 2 years in the contract, the staff didn't get paid. That's my understanding. I'm not here to bash, I'm being honest. We ended up with the class already set, great students, great program. What happens in the back of the house does not need to come in the front of the house with the customers. So thanks to PCC and other assistants, we got funding to fund that class because the show needs to continue. The funding that we are asking for is to fund the client advocate, the person that sits in the front and assists people filling out their Medicaid applications, referring them to other services in the community. Every other service that we offer in our agency have been funded. We are not asking to fund our immigration attorney program. We're not asking for our computer class. We are not asking for the ESL class. We are not asking for the parenting classes that we do. We're not asking for the community workshops that we do. We're not asking for the consulate, Mexican consulate comes in and our expenses that brings in. Those programs we are not asking you to fund those. They have been funded. The program that we ask to be funded is the one that we feel fits to the city, the one that we feel that helps the city. They all do, but this is the only one that we don't have funding for. So when I heard let's cut from them and put it here, we're talking two different programs. Just that. Sorry, thank you.
Okay. All right, Morris. Hang on a second, Florence.
Good morning, Mayor, Board. As chairman of the Carson City Republican Central Committee, we have developed a relationship with the ESL in-home program. Through our outreach committee, we have been providing tutors. The tutors generally pay for the books that they provide to the students. This is a program that is worthy of funding. I would encourage you to fund it at the highest level you can possibly see fit. Thank you.
Okay. Florence, you want to do one more time or not? Because we'll go. Mike?
So, Mike Davis, ESL in home, I didn't catch her name. Yada. So it appears that based on what Yada is stating, we are not a duplicative program, and for that reason, we ask that you partially fund our program. Eliminating funding to this program will, in effect, none of the funding, it sounds like none of the funding they're requesting is actually going to that program, going to the ESL program. So it's not really a duplicative program at all. So that's why, basically my point is that it's not duplicative at all and that we should receive a certain portion of the funding. And I'll leave that up to you to determine, and the ARW, as you best see fit to determine that portion. The key point that I want to make is not that this is one organization versus another organization, but there are students in both organizations that need both programs and need the funding. And by going with a zero approach for us and a full approach to the other program, it's just saying you're just picking which students. But if you do a partial funding, then all the students can still enjoy some of the benefit. And so for that reason, I solicit that you would partially fund our program. Thank you.
Well, hang on a minute. I know what the next statement's going to be. I got you. I mean, one is going to say, you know what, we're not asking for funding that's going to be duplicative of what ESL and Home is doing. So I got you. Theirs is for a specific assigned position. Let me just ask you before you, what happened, or if you know, with respect to the office that ESL and Home had at the United Latino Community, over the offices over there, if you know what happened there?
I was not.
And were people paid or not paid?
I was not directly involved with what happened there, and I only received.
Well, that's okay. Then
Florence would have a better idea, but as far as what was communicated to me was that.
You don't have to speculate. It's okay if you weren't there. Don't worry about it. I don't want to put you on the spot. Okay.
Anything further?
Okay. Sure. Go ahead.
Their program director was a tutor for ESL in-home program. She was trained as a tutor. After 1 year, she became an AmeriCorps Vista tutor in my program. I had 5 AmeriCorps Vistas for 5 years. She was one of them. She was in charge of Carson City. So she was getting paid by AmeriCorps, not by ESL In-Home. ESL In-Home doesn't have funds to pay salaries until you stepped in 2 years ago and gave us funds to have an assistant, a clerical assistant. You gave us $10,000 at that time.
Okay, thanks.
Kathleen, who was working at ULC, playing both roles because as a VISTA, Partnership Carson City, who was very supportive of our program, gave us an office for our VISTA worker at that time. When the VISTA left and Kathleen stepped in, that became her office. So she was being paid by AmeriCorps, and Partnership Carson City, this is before ULC, was very supportive, giving us space for many classrooms and tutors to go in there at various times to conduct teaching. Then, when ULC came on board, just a minute now, they came on board a year ago, and Kathleen, who was the project director, as I said, was working for both of us. So Kathleen had all the information, all the files that, of course, I gave to her of all our students, all our tutors, all our potential students, you know, everybody on a waiting list. And somehow or other, on October 18th, I received a resignation from her. And they took over our students and our tutors. No complaint from me. If I had known about this, I would have given her and ULC my blessings. But I did not know. So all of a sudden, we lost those tutors and students, which I understand, since they were working there for so long, that that's where they would stay.
Okay, Florence, I think, you know,
And
we're not
that's
going to
what
air the...
happened.
I just wanted to clarify the issue on the payment. I think you did that. But I don't want to, there's clearly something going on between the organizations here you guys need to solve outside of us,
Oh,
and so
yeah.
we'll go down that road. So thanks. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
All right.
I can speak to the application work group.
All right.
So, looking through the application materials, which I believe you have some of, I do see one area where we would have considered, there was the difference in programs, so that's obviously something that's been clarified here. The materials that were mentioned that were purchased by ESL and Home, according to their annual report, it was actually primarily salaries that were paid with the funding. So I'm not sure if that was a consistency or maybe just a mistake. On the ULC, I would say that the work group would have considered, you know, how the funding would go to both groups. And it looks like the ULC is ramping up. So with respect to providing funding for some of the groups that we see, we're more apt to provide funding for those groups because they are getting started ramping up, whereas if we've provided funding a few times, we're kind of saying, hey, you know, are you looking at other funding sources? Are you working to get resources from other groups as you're moving forward? So those are some of the things that we consider in this, and I think we do have some challenges with these two groups. So.
Thanks, Chris.
Yep.
All right. Anybody else want to weigh in on any of the issues that are up here? I think we've got this one pretty well, at least the issues identified. So I don't know where we're going to go with it, but on anything else? Anybody? Come on up.
Good morning. I'm Susan Sorensen. I'm director at the Northern Nevada Dream Center. And
Northern Nevada what?
Northern Nevada Dream Center.
Okay, hi.
And during my interview, there was some concern expressed about the budget I had presented. I had presented a partial budget more directed at the specifics of how the grant money would be spent if we were to receive it. So I did prepare a budget that encompasses our entire organization. I'm not sure if now is the time to be able to present that, or as you're
Probably
reviewing
not.
over the next 30 days?
I don't know. I don't know that it's, I don't think we can update it here on, you know, Janice?
Sorry, what was, she requested an update on the budget?
The question is, they have an updated budget that they wanted to,
Well, I had submitted a budget that was only about the money that we were requesting, and two people on the committee had asked, you know, well, what does your whole organization look like? So I can provide that if needed, so it can be used over the next 30 days during the review process.
I don't.
Oh, there's no 30-day review process for
This
the
is,
CSSG.
right, this 30 days is for the CDBG grant program, and this is the CSSG, but, I mean, if you want to present the revised budget to the board, I think that's up to them if they want to look
well,
at that. I don't know if
that's
that would make a
unfair
difference.
to do that now, I mean, because everybody's going to get up, but why don't you just tell us, you know, what the grant, what you expected the grant to be, and kind of fill us in on what your, you know, what your overall budget says without giving it to us. Just tell us a little bit about it.
Okay.
Then we'll maybe cut, because I don't want to get in a position where we're, you know, going to, using one process and then changing it. So go ahead.
Yeah, I
Sure.
completely understand. I mean, the budget we presented was for the specific amount of money that we were requesting. We'd be using that money for improvements to our, we had a food truck donated recently. We have some kitchen equipment, things like that, that need to be upgraded. So our overall budget, we're 100% volunteer run. All of our money comes from donations or fundraising. So our budget is not huge. We've been serving in Carson City for 4 years, just last year incorporated as the Northern Nevada Dream Center. So compared to the money requesting compared to our budget, doesn't go to staff costs, anything like that, just some improvements that we needed to do, one-time improvements.
Okay, thank you very much. All right.
Okay.
Got it.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, anybody else? All right, we're going to come back here at the board and see what we want to do.
We want to have discussion first or something?
Yeah, discussion, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I can go first.
Go.
All right, here's my feeling about all of this. We task a work group with looking at all this information because we have an hour and a half to look at all this material here at the meeting and discuss it, and they spent literally a full day, at least 8 hours, if not more, together, plus additional time that they had the packages, reviewing them before they had their meeting. So I'm not inclined to second guess them. I would highly recommend that ULC and ELS in-home get together and try to work out their differences, because we have very limited funds. As you can see, we have $185,000 to give out and had requests for $255,000, and we just can't do it. We have limited funds. I think it's inherent upon you to try to work out your differences and share resources whenever possible. So I can tell you that I'm not going to second guess the committee. I'm going to go with their recommendations.
I have to agree with Brad. I know a lot of time and effort went in with this committee, analyzing and reviewing all of this information. And it's not that these organizations aren't all worthy, they are, but as Brad said, the money just doesn't go far enough, and it's a matter of allocating where it can work the best for the broadest number of people. So I'm not inclined to change what has already been allocated.
Okay, anybody else want to weigh in? Jim?
I think we have a majority maybe going here. So, what's the date and time? I just want to echo what our fellow supervisors are saying. I've been to this meeting where I've seen this committee at work, and it is fabulous what they do and how they evaluate and how they distribute the money. I won't second guess this particular committee and how they did it, because I've seen the process. I think they do a great job of figuring out how to alleviate our problems. And I think following their recommendation is what I'm going to do.
Okay. We'll take a motion, see where it goes. Motion.
All right. I move to approve CDBG grant funding for public improvement in the amount of $52,442 and CSSG grant funding in the amount of $185,000 as recommended by the work group committee.
Second.
Supervisor Bunkowski, that was supposed to be for public services, CDBG public services. You said improvements.
Okay, as amended.
Do you have the motion correct? Okay, the motion was made by Supervisor Bunkowski, second by who?
Second.
Second by Supervisor Shirk on the motion. Discussion. These are hard discussions, folks. They're just difficult all the way around, so. Okay, on the motion, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay. Passed unanimous. Thanks to your committee for all the work it did. Thanks to everybody out here in the audience who does great work for our community. Thank you. All right. Hang on.
Yara from United Latina Community. Quick invitation, this Saturday, the Mexican consulate is going to be at our office. I would love for you guys to come and see what they do and the number of people that we're going to be serving. They will be there from 8 to 3. I think our people would like to see you guys there. Thank you.
I think Kathy Bartos told you that I was supposed to be there tomorrow night, and I've got... Okay.
Saturday.
All right.
Yes,
Saturday.
thank you so much.
All right, thank you. All right. Anything else? Let's see, where am I on the agenda then?
22.
We're on number 22. Hang on. We'll be in recess for 5 minutes till noon.
So the city would be able to have 3 months' worth of fund balance that would be protected from collective bargaining. It would also insert specific reopener language so that in the event of a fiscal emergency, the collective bargaining agreements could be reopened. It would provide specific language. The language that has been used in this specific bill is actually language that came from Carson City. That particular, or those specific clauses are in our current collective bargaining agreements. We believe it would insert sound fiscal policy into the collective bargaining process, and the city has signed in support of that particular bill.
Nick, if I could interrupt you for just a second, doesn't that bill also include reservations for workers' comp and insurance or health premium funds?
It does.
Which in our case is a significant amount of money that
It
would
is.
be protected.
That would be protected.
Thank you.
Correct. Yes. Senate Bill 108 is another of the, you've heard some of the prevailing wage debate that's been going on. This would also raise the limit from, currently it's $100,000 to $1 million of local construction that would apply to us. That would not be required to submit to the prevailing wage law. Senate Bill 158 would require posting of collective bargaining agreements. Currently, we adhere to the open meeting laws, which is basically 3 working days to post any item that's going to come in front of this board. For collective bargaining agreements, this bill would extend that out to 10 working days to post all the collective bargaining agreements. That would be after the collective bargaining unit ratified it, before the local government or the county board of commissioners considered it. It would have to be posted for 10 days. Senate Bill 59 is a bill that we have indicated our opposition to, at least as it's currently written. We've put a fiscal note on it that we estimate it would cost Carson City $200,000 to implement it. Senate Bill 59 is the business portal. I mean, the concept is not a bad idea, but it's basically an unfunded mandate on local governments to implement it. I believe there's going to be a compromise worked out in that this bill would be an enabling bill. It would not be mandatory, it'd be voluntary. I haven't seen the final language on that, but if that language, in fact, is purely just an enabling bill, then it might be something that we could be neutral on or support. But right now, as it's currently written, we oppose Senate Bill 59. Senate Bill 11 is the NACO Home Rule Bill. This is a rather limited home rule bill. This does not provide, unlimited home rule. You can't raise taxes and things like that are already restricted. It's a limited functional home rule bill. So if an action is not prohibited by statute or by NRS, then this board would have the ability to either change or modify or so I think the best examples tend to fall into, the sheriff's hours and things like that. You would not need to have, request the state authorize us to change our opening or our closing hours. Various nuisance laws, abandoned vehicles and things like that. So it's a rather limited and functional home rule bill. AB 10, Assembly Bill 10, is the NACO Indigent Defense Bill. That would provide state funding for capital crimes for indigents that are accused of capital crimes. We support that bill as well. Senate Bill 16 is a NACO pre-sentence investigation bill. Currently, the state and local governments split that. The state provides 30% of the funding. The local government provides 70% of the funding. This bill would propose to reverse that percentage so that the state would provide 70% of the funding, we provide 30% of the funding. You can kind of see where the compromise is going to go on this, and it may end up with a 50-50 split, which I guess we'll take. It's better than 30-70, but we do support that bill. Senate Bill 30 is the NACO longevity bill. Evidently, there have been other municipalities or other counties during an economic downturn where elected officials, other city employees were forced to take a longevity or other pay cut. The elected officials didn't want to give theirs up. This bill initially started with it would require elected officials to lose their longevity pay. Instead, the way that the bill is now written, it's another enabling bill. It's voluntary to provide elected officials the option of foregoing a longevity pay and a longevity pay increase. Assembly Bill 90 is the Nevada Mutual Aid Bill. Mainly state level, we support it. It doesn't really have much impact at the local level. What it does is set up, among other things, a state mutual aid committee. We don't see much of an impact of this bill. Senate Bill 122, we oppose. This is a contractor recycling bill. It would require contractors to take all of their solid waste to an appropriate recycling facility. We operate the landfill here, so not only would we be diverting construction materials from the landfill, but we would also, so that would be a reduction in our general fund revenues, but it would also be an increase in cost for contractors. So I think the contractors also are opposed to that bill. Assembly Bill 19, tentative budget bill, basically required the city to complete its budget action and have things posted, have hearings done on or before the third Monday in May. We already do that. We support that bill. Assembly Bill 170 is a bonding bill, and we oppose it as it's currently written. What it would do would be to limit to less than $2.5 million the bonding that this board could approve. Anything $2.5 million or above would require a vote of the people. I understand that the sponsor of that bill intends to remove that paragraph from the bill, and if that's the case, I think the city should probably support that bill. Senate Bill 170 is a data center tax abatement. You've heard about Switch, the data firm locating in northern Nevada. This bill mainly applies to Lyon and Story County, but it's regional development. They have to, anyone who's going to live or work there, or any contractor who's going to support that data center has to live or work somewhere. It's regional development. It's good for northern Nevada. It's good for Carson, and therefore I think we support that bill. Senate Bill 148 is a sleeping period bill, and what that bill was mainly designed for were home health care workers, so that the time that those workers are sleeping is not compensated. In other words, they're not getting paid for the time that they're sleeping. There's been a specific exemption of firefighters, and therefore we're neutral on that bill. It doesn't really affect us one way or the other from a municipal government point of view. Senate Bill 95, publication of tax rolls. The way that this bill, the compromise on this bill is something that I think we can support. We will be able to publish our tax rolls on a website, and as long as we can continue to do that, we won't incur the costs of actually print advertising, and the city would support that bill. Assembly Bill 41 sets up a separate fund for indigent care. We were watching that real closely to make sure that we, the counties, weren't going to lose any funding. Doesn't look like the state is going to take any funding from the counties, so I think we're neutral on that one as well. Senate Bill 153, very controversial bill. This would revise the so-called heart-lung benefit that our public safety employees get. I believe there's probably going to be a compromise worked out. I think as the compromise takes shape, I think both the collective bargaining units and the proponents of this bill, certainly the lead sponsor, is going to come to an agreement that's probably going to look something like we're responsible until that individual reaches Medicare eligibility. Upon reaching Medicare eligibility, then obviously Medicare would take over from that point forward. The only reason that we supported the bill is we're looking for a common sense way to provide some type of a nexus, some type of a connection between the illness and the employment. We're not looking to take away this benefit. It's a legitimate benefit that people have worked hard for. We've had, within Carson City itself, we've had firefighters who have developed a work-related cancer. We're not looking to take that benefit away from people. We just want to have some type of a common sense connection between the illness and the employment. That's all we're looking for, and I think we're going to be able to come up with a compromise that everyone can at least get behind. Assembly Bill 106, we oppose this. This is the so-called design professionals bill. It's been pushed by architectural, engineering, surveying, professional organizations. It would basically limit their liability in the event of any type of either willful or accidental problems that arose from their design. They would no longer be required to defend the local government. So it would shift their liability from themselves to us, and we very strongly oppose that bill. Senate Bill 149, this would provide a matching grant fund for road repair and road construction. For us, we would very strongly support something like this, a fund that would basically give us more money for road repair and road construction. It would cut down immeasurably on the number of problems that the community has, on the complaints that you all field from citizens. I don't want to handicap it, but 4 state departments have put fiscal notes on it in opposition. So if I had to guess, I wouldn't bet a whole lot of money on this bill going anywhere, but we do support it. Finally, Assembly Bill 191 is a fuel indexing bill. This would put an agenda item on the 2016 ballot. It would be a vote county by county. So, one county could approve and the bill has the method of how the fuel tax would be indexed. So one county could approve it, other counties could disapprove it, and so on across all 17 counties. We support the bill. We would prefer it be statewide, because you can imagine where one county might index it, the neighboring county or the neighboring counties may not. So what effect does that then have on revenues? You could end up with a county indexing and other counties not indexing. So where are people going to go to buy their gas? But even with that, we do support this bill. No one likes to have a tax increase, but we do need to have additional funds. If you remember from Patrick Pittenger's brief on road repairs, how much of a drop-off that we have had in that fuel tax revenue. People drive fewer miles, we have more fuel-efficient vehicles, so the net effect is we're down considerably in the revenues that we collect from the current fuel tax. So there's new bills every day, and there are other bills that are moving through committee, but pursuant to or subsequent to your questions, that concludes the brief that I have here.
Hi. Nick, did we take a position on Assembly Bill 28 that dealt with the record requests from the public and the fees that deal with that? Did we take any position at all?
Give me 1 second.
No problem.
AB 28. Did you, Sue?
We didn't send any
Yeah,
position one way or the other.
I'll check to make sure, but
Let me know.
based on the data I have, we did not.
Okay.
Actually, I think we remain neutral on that. I think we were just monitoring it, if I remember correctly.
I just want to say thank you for the update, and could you email us that update, Nick? All the bills you just read off and everything where we're doing? Is that possible?
I should have a much more in-depth report from our lobbyist, probably the beginning of next week. She does a monthly report, and it's more in-depth than my own notes. So I'll email you that report. I appreciate it. That's okay.
Any progress on the number of dispensaries in Carson City? Is there gonna be a bill on that? Do you happen to know?
Currently, that's a BDR. We're tracking it. Supervisor Shirk brought up the medical marijuana dispensaries. There's currently a BDR. I don't think it's gone yet to committee as a bill, but the net effect for Carson City would increase by 1, so we'd go from 2 to 3 dispensaries that you could allow. Of course, our current ordinance is written so there's only 2. So if that bill ever does pass, you would then have to obviously change our ordinance if you wanted to authorize what would be a 3rd dispensary. Did that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? Any board members thing going on? Jim, sorry.
One thing,
go.
or maybe 2. The State Fair is July 30th to August 2nd here, so that's good news. I do want to point out that the Audit Committee is meeting at 1 o'clock. We have the RTC meeting at 4:30, and I think it's in the best interest.
I'm sorry, I thought we were talking today, and I'm thinking about the calendar.
No, I was going to tell you the dates. They're meeting next week. They're meeting at 1 o'clock, the audit, and RTC is meeting at 4:30. Most citizens work from 9 to 5. I think these meetings, all meetings of committees, boards, and so forth, should start at 5:30. They should all be in the Sierra Room. I just think this is a citizen's opportunity to go to a meeting and talk about the audit where they may not be able to attend a Board of Supervisors meeting, which starts at 8:30. But I think all these meetings should always start at a time convenient to citizens to attend. That's just my opinion, and we should maybe look at that. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Any other board? Okay. Are we ready to adjourn until 1:30? I will be, so it's a little advance notice, I'll be abstaining, disclosing and abstaining when we come to the Cultural Commission, and I'll make that known when we get there, so, okay. We'll be in recess until 1:30.